Welcome to day 2 of the 2025 Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. We're on the northeast coast of England in the town of Hartlepool for stage 2. The riders will be heading south to the finish in Saltburn by the sea and the iconic climb up Saltburn Bank with its famous hairpins and the steep gradients. That finish is always providing us with exciting racing, and we certainly got treated to plenty of that on stage 1.
110 riders rolled out from Dalby Forest in Yorkshire with 81.5 kilometres of rolling terrain ahead of them on the way to the finish on the coast in Redcar. Anushka Costa led over the first Queen of the Mountains climb of the day.
Look at this from the Polish champion in white, though. Dominika Wladaszek is giving Anushka Costa a good run for her money.
But it was on the second categorised climb at Saltburn Bank that the race really got going. Kim LaCourte attacked, and Olympic road race champion Kristen Faulkner and Olympic time trial silver medalist Anna Henderson tried to go with her.
And it's Kim LaCourte kicking things off, and Anna Henderson's trying to follow. She's attempting to try and follow the wheel.
The rider from Mauritius was first over the top of the climb, and on the descent she was joined by Faulkner. The pair held on to their advantage through the day's sprint at Newton under Rosebery. But as the race headed towards the finish in Redcar, the chasing pack were closing in fast.
Kim LaCourte goes in the white jersey. Look at the way that the Olympic road race champion Faulkner is trying to challenge. But it's LaCourte who's got the advantage. LaCourte has half a bike length. Well, she's going to be able to take stage 1, or is she? Oh, there she takes it. Kim LaCourte wins stage 1 into Redcar of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Behind is the European champion Lorena Wiebes, who takes 3rd. Faulkner settles for 2nd.
Because of time bonuses for the first 3 riders across the finish, Kim LaCourte's lead over Kristen Faulkner is 5 seconds. Lorena Wiebes is 3rd at 14 seconds. Then comes Caroline Swinkles at 17, and a group of riders at 18 seconds, including British riders Kat Ferguson and Millie Cousins.
Well, a terrific stage yesterday. The team's already arriving into Hartlepool. Damp conditions, but everybody ready and waiting for another exciting day as we head to Saltburn by the sea. Yesterday's stage winner was Kim LaCourte, an incredible performance from her. Let's hear from the Mauritian champion.
Kim, congratulations. How was it out there today?
Yeah, thank you. I think it was super windy, but we expected it. We expect the weather to be unpredictable here in England. So yeah, I think we did exactly what we wanted to do as a team. The points where I went is where we wanted to go, and yeah, obviously winning the stage was a cherry on the cake. So I'm really happy I could pull it off for the team, but it's still 3 more days to go, and everything needs to go smooth to pull off a tour. So yeah, we're not gonna get too excited and still stay focused.
How was it? What impact did the wind have out there today?
Yeah, it was proper. I think on the the moment from 44 k's in the race until I'd probably say the last 5 k's was okay, because we were on the windy roads, so it was kind of hidden in some parts not. But the group behind also needs to work hard, so we're both kind of working into the wind. It's mostly in the last stretch and last 3 k's that was really hard for me because I'm much smaller than Kristen, so it was a bit more difficult to kind of pace through with her. But yeah, we kept it to the line. It was super close, but we managed it.
The plan was executed perfectly yesterday from AG Insurance Soudal. And this rider will be wearing the green leaders jersey of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women for stage 2. Let's see what the riders have on offer from Hartlepool to Saltburn by the sea. Meanwhile, we've got Anushka Costa. She's in the blue jersey. She's borrowing the Queen of the Mountains jersey off the shoulders of Kim LaCourte. She's the Dutch rider who took the 6 points yesterday on the first Queen of the Mountain. You can see there in the white jersey, there's Kat Ferguson, the British rider of Movistar, looking resplendent in green. Kim LaCourte on the far left side, Joe Tinley of Smurfit West Rock in the red. Well, the countdown has begun, and they're officially waved off for the neutralised section. 5.2 kilometres of neutralised. Great to see so many of the locals who are out on course at the start today, and particularly with our local cycling clubs who are there in attendance as well. Weather conditions not not fantastic today, but you can see all of the riders have got their rain jackets on, their gilets on. Let's hope that it gets better, just as it did yesterday with the weather conditions. It's always great to get the riders underway, especially with the great crowds. With this neutralised section, then they'll get underway. 114.3 kilometres of racing. Another demanding stage, actually, 1,392 metres of elevation. And given the fact that the final part of the stage, particularly into the final 40 kilometres, are pretty demanding. You've got lots of undulation, you've got steep climbs. Some riders will know this part of Northeast England very well. It's where the National Road Race Championships have been held for the last 2 years. Pfeiffer Georgie winning that national title on both occasions. And of course, the national champion of Picnic Postenel not here in attendance, but I'm sure she's given her teammates and European teammates a lot of information as to how to race that final climb into our finish. We'll enter into that loop, by the way, into the final with 34.8 kilometres to go. Until we get there, we've got relatively flat opening to the stage, a few undulations, a few short, steep little climbs. It really is into the final 40 kilometres where things start to get a little bit more difficult. Well, settle yourselves in. Stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women, another great stage on the cards. Thanks for joining us. My name's Hannah Walker. Alongside me, as yesterday, is Hayley Simmons. Hayley, good morning. What a stage we had yesterday.
Yeah, it was really exciting, wasn't it? And I think with the nature of the course today, particularly the kind of, the final circuit, I think we're going to get more explosions, more fireworks on Saltburn Bank later this afternoon.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And given the fact that there's lots of British interest in the field, we've got all 5 of our British continental teams. We've also got plenty of our British World Tour pros. They'll know this final lap very well, and particularly Saltburn Bank, which is such a demanding climb. It's only short, but it's a hard finish. And then, of course, we've got our Queen of the Mountain up Marske.
Yeah, exactly. That final climb up Saltburn Bank it's about 300 metres, but I think the maximum gradient's over 17% actually, so it's really steep, and the approach into it is fast. You have quite a fast descent, and then hairpins going up the bank as well. So you've really got to get your entry correct. You've got to get your gear shifts correct, and the British riders are definitely going to have an advantage with that, because people who've raced the national championships or one of the national series races will have done that climb numerous times before. bit of a problem there.
Chiara Consoli and Eleonora Gasparini, where are you off? The 2 Italian riders, and they're very good friends. Well, they've taken a little bit of a detour. They've rejoined, but you can see they're great characters, these 2 riders. They're former teammates, very good friends, as I say, but now Chiara Consoni in that black jersey racing for Canyon SRAM Zonda Crypto. You've got Eleonora Gasparini in the white for UAE Team AGQ. That's certainly a way to get your spirits up in these kind of conditions. Hey, Hayley.
Just having a bit of a chat, and took the wrong side of the road. It was lucky for them actually that it kind of rejoined the neutral route and didn't just take them off in a completely different direction.
Oh dear me. Well, you could see the driver in our leading car in the Redcar, Steve Jockin, thinking, where are you off to? We've got a road book for a reason,
Yeah, these neutral zones, the neutral, it can go one of 2 ways, I think, in some of these races. Some of the neutral zones in some of the Belgian and Dutch races early in the season are definitely not actually neutral. They're often more hectic than the race itself, but sometimes in this kind of race you can see that the Commissaire's car is got quite a relaxed pace, and it's a nice opportunity for riders just to settle into rhythm. A lot of them just have a bit of a chat, and actually the spirits within the car are normally quite high as well.
In general, this neutralised section feels very calm and tranquil. You mentioned about some of the neutralised sections that everyone's jostling and fighting for position. If you're racing in the Netherlands, if you're racing in Belgium, and everybody's wanting to frantically get to the front, but this does feel very calm and quite placid.
Yeah, some of the Belgian and Dutch ones are chaos because you tend to start in the centre of a town and you've got narrow cobbled streets, and riders know that there are technicalities coming up, either in the form of more narrow cobbled streets or maybe wind or changes of direction. So everyone basically races the neutral zone, which might normally be 2 or 3 kilometres. They race each other to get to the front and get into the good position for when the flag drops. We can see here that the road is a bit wider, so there isn't quite as much need to be right at the front. And with the nature of today's race, in terms of where the sprint points come, where the climbs come, there's nothing very early on in the stage, so there's a good opportunity for riders to settle into a rhythm without the chaos of trying to be right on the bumper of the commissaire's car in the neutral.
Well, we've got our first visit for the women's race to the Tees Valley today. Of course, the Lloyds Tour of Britain men has visited the Tees Valley on 2 occasions. The first time back in 2022 when we had a start in Duncan Park from Redcar. In 2024 we had a stage from Darlington to Redcar. That was won by Stevie Williams. And from Aberystwyth. Yeah, this
I was just
screech of the disc brakes in these conditions, can't you?
Yeah, the sound of a disc brake in wet weather. I'm hoping it's going to dry up a bit. Yesterday, obviously, we were really lucky. It pretty much stopped raining as the riders rolled out, and then actually the sun made an appearance later. But you can see how much rain there's been overnight just with that standing water on the sides of the road, and that's going to make some of the roads pretty slick and could add to some of the difficulties on today's stage.
Oh, we're up in the northeast of England, just between North Yorkshire and the south in County Durham of the north. The Tees Valley stage, it's going to race through 3 of the boroughs alongside North Yorkshire. It's of course been a major location of many cycling events in recent years. Our national championships on a number of occasions. It's 2 years. Of course, that stage of the Tour of Britain last year.
Some of the facial expressions indicated that the riders were not much enjoying the spray from the wet roads.
Some of the classic specialists, well, once they get into it, they'll be thriving, I'm sure. Of course, cycling very, very popular in this area, and it's an increasingly popular destination for cycling tourists for lots of major events. You've also got big clubs including Stockton Wheelers, you've got Manila Cycling, and of course the region is home to the 2 professional riders, and the brothers Harry and Charlie Tanfield. They come from Great Ayton. We passed through their home village yesterday. Of course, brilliant landscape as well, very close to the sea. This morning they had a very interesting sign-on, and when I read about it and when I was seeing a few pictures and images from the start this morning, it was incredible. They started, instead of a traditional podium sign-on, and I think we're about to get go through kilometre 0 and get this race underway. You can see Rod Ellingworth, the race director, who's out of the sunroof of the car with that yellow flag. We'll come back to the podium sign-on in a moment. Let's get the racing officially underway. As I said before, 5.2 kilometres of neutralised before officially getting stage 2 underway, 114.3 kilometre stage. Just doing all of the last checks, making sure that everybody is in the peloton, nobody's in the convoy having had a problem. There he is, Rod Ellingworth. The suspense, isn't it? What's going to happen?
Exactly.
Are we going to have a breakaway today? Because you can see several of the British continental teams who are up towards the front, and no doubt on a day like today they'll be wanting to try and get themselves up the road and to try and be a big feature in stage 2.
I think today's stage offers probably the best opportunity for a breakaway to go. And as you mentioned, it will likely be riders from some of the British continental teams that will want to show their faces, show their jerseys up the road in a breakaway. We don't have any categorised climbs or any sprints until kilometre 74 nearly, I think. So there's a lot of opportunity for riders to try and make a move before the jersey wearers and the bigger teams think about maybe reeling them back in and looking towards the finish.
There's the European champion, Lorena Weaver. She's got that black jersey on with the SD Works at the back of her. She's got the blue European bands around the cuffs of her shorts. At the back here, Emma Norsgaard-Bjørn and Ord Bienic sharing a word. Two former teammates when they were racing for Movistar. Just up ahead, you can see the green sign. That is kilometre 0. Just at the back, number 165 here is one of our continental riders. And that rider is the rider from Hansling Alba. That's Ariana Holland. Of course, they've got a great rider in Lauren Dickinson. Let's see what Lauren Dickinson can do on a day like today. Well, the horn is tooted through kilometre 0. The flag is waved. Stage 2 officially underway here at the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. From Hartlepool to Saltburn by the Sea, 114.3 kilometres of racing. On the left side in the pink jerseys, that's CF Education Oatley. Yesterday they had a fantastic ride, of course, with USA National Road Race Champion and Olympic champion Kristen Faulkner. She put herself in good stead trying to go for that general classification, a race that 4 stages that will suit her really well. Here she is at the back on that gold bike. Sterling job that the team and Cannondale have done to denote being a US national champion and Olympic champion.
I know, she's got some very nice coordinating paint jobs, and also kit. You know, you can see on the sleeves of her national champions jersey, she's got the gold bands as well, and gold on the helmet. So just all these little touches that, you know, make a rider feel quite special as well. It's really nice when the sponsors kind of put effort in to make you something unique and to commemorate great achievements. I think the riders aren't really sure what kit they really want to be wearing at the moment, because that neutral was quite slow, and one thing that can happen in the neutral if it is quite sedate is, and as we mentioned, one of the British riders trying to get away, trying to get up the road. I think possibly she'd hope that someone would come with her, and yep, there we go.
One rider from Das Hutchinson trying to bridge across. Looks as though it's Lucy Harris who's trying to go up the road for Smurfit Westrock cycling team in that red jersey with the black shorts.
And then I think that's a Hess rider as well, another of the British teams trying to join these two riders up front. So that would make quite a nice trio with 3 of the British teams represented. And let's see if they actually manage to establish a break. It doesn't look as though there's much reaction from behind at the moment.
By the looks of things, this is Tamsin Miller, the British rider of Das Hutchinson. Get a name check and a number check on the rider from Das Hutchinson in a moment. But still, there's a little bit more reaction from behind. A couple more riders wanting to try and move forward. Oh, and a big crash. A big crash further down. Several riders have been caught up, including the green jersey, Kim LaCourt. The leader on the left side, that is not good news for Kim LaCourt.
She looks to be in some pain, actually. That's really bad news. And Kristen Faulkner obviously also caught up, which that's a real risk, especially in these kind of conditions. Let's just see what happened.
Fava Bastiansen also coming down, a touch of wheels, and Kim LaCourt coming down hard on that far left side. Jess Roberts in that fluorescent gilet also caught up in the crash. Well, that is heartbreaking for Kim LaCourt. Let's hope she's being seen to by the race doctors. Let's hope that she is indeed well enough to continue in this race. That's from yesterday, when you execute the plan to perfection, and it just shows how quickly things can change in cycling.
It's such a risk because this sort of road, it's quite wide. There's no kind of obvious difficulty. So at this early stage of today's stage, riders would probably feel a bit more comfortable just sitting towards the back, not being too concerned with not being right at the front. But then, of course, if you are at the back and a crash happens ahead of you, you have very little option with where to go.
Wilma Entela is coming back for Canyon SRAM Zonda Crypto. Likewise, one of the riders from FDJ Suez. This is Amber Crack, number 26 in the black jersey on the blue bike. There's Kat Ferguson, the leader in the best young rider classification. A rider from Movistar. Also coming back is Melina D'Zuta of Ceratizit Pro Cycling. Meanwhile, there's still action at the head of the peloton. Riders trying to break away. One other rider trying to make a move now in the red jersey. That's Joe Tinley, another rider from Das Hutchinson.
British teams are really, the British teams are really keen to try and get away. We can see actually there's quite a lot of standing water on the road, which might be making some of the riders a bit nervous as well, because it's things like that that can cause some riders to possibly panic a little bit, apply their brakes too much, and ultimately that's what can cause these crashes like the one we just saw.
South African rider Tiffany Keep, the next rider to make a move for Das Hutchinson. They've come with a strong plan set out by the sports directors Simon Howes and Oliver Moores, that they want to try and get themselves up the road, and they know that it's a brilliant opportunity to do so on a day like today, and particularly given the fact that the opening 20 kilometres or so are relatively flat. Good opportunity, and the fact that we don't have any Queen of the Mountain points or intermediate sprints until or into that final 40 kilometres bodes well for a breakaway. Those who have been chasing back on, they make it back into the peloton. Ariana Holland, number 165 of Hansling Elba Development Road Team, she made it back in as well.
And each day there's also a combativity award for the most aggressive rider on that stage. And some of the British riders will be looking to earn that award each day, because maybe they have a slightly lower chance of having an overall jersey on a stage. So actually the combativity prize is a great way for those riders to be on the podium at the end of the day.
See in the background all of the industrial industry. Hartlepool has actually played a huge part in the Tees Valley maritime history. You've also got the National Museum of the Royal Navy, which is situated just behind where we started earlier on in the town's marina. It's also home to the HMS Trincomalee, which was launched in 1817. It's actually the last remaining Royal Navy ship to be built in India, but it's also the oldest British warship which is still afloat. And the town also boasts the Hugh Battery Museum, which preserves the only First World War battlefield in the UK, commemorating the bombardment of Hartlepool in December 1914. Hartlepool's actually rapidly becoming a real hotbed for creative industries. We've got the Northern Film and TV Studios, the only large-scale studio complex in the northeast.
And of course that warship was where the riders signed on, which is what you were starting to talk about earlier before we reached kilometre zero.
Certainly something different for the riders. Not the traditional podium sign-on. You're on board the HMS Trincomalee, which is something special and something pretty apt for today. They also had a cannon aboard the ship, which was fired at 10:45. If you want to go and visit the museum, by the way, well worth a visit. Opened back in 1994, became an official National Museum of the Royal Navy back in 2016. You can experience life at sea from over 200 years ago inside that museum. There's a lot to offer in Hartlepool. Meanwhile, Joe Tinley, she's got a big chase on her hands to try and get to the wheel of Tiffany Keep, who you can just see is already entering into the roundabout. She wants some companions in this breakaway. I think both of them do. You want 5 or 6 of you in a breakaway like this on such a longer stage.
Especially with 108 kilometres still remaining. We saw Joe Tinley actually last year. I think it was a solo breakaway that she had on stage 3. So she's no stranger to a breakaway in this race, in the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. So, you know, she'll be hoping that she can represent her team and her team's jersey in a breakaway again today.
She's one of the most experienced riders within the peloton, and particularly on the British scene. She's been racing for so many years. She's raced numerous national championships. She's raced numerous big events on the continent. She's almost moulding into a role of a road captain within her squad now.
Yeah, I was about to say she's a great mentor for the riders on her team. She's almost always road captain on the British teams that she's part of, because as you said, she's one of the most experienced riders still racing. She's a rider that I looked up to when I started, and I'd still ask her for advice now. She knows the sport so well. She also knows how to get the best out of her teammates, and she coaches people as well. So I think that kind of natural instinct to mentor and help other people is just a real great benefit in that team environment.
Tiffany Keep in the blue jersey, still persisting with this sole breakaway. She's got another couple of riders who are attempting to try and come across. One of those riders, another rider from the Smurfit Westrock cycling team on the red bike, the black jersey. Also one rider trying to come across. It's certainly a lot of action from our British continental teams, and we've got 5 continental teams in Great Britain. All 5 have been invited to the race, and now they're showing why they deserve the invitation.
Absolutely. Of course, one risk of these 2 riders now trying to bridge across is if too many riders try to join that breakaway, then there will be reaction from the peloton. So they need to just be a little bit careful not to kind of send too many people up the road, because actually what that will end up doing is neutralising the breakaway, and the riders that are already ahead will end up being brought back. But at the moment, having kind of 4 British riders from those continental teams would be a nice situation for all of them. I don't think the big teams in the peloton would be too concerned about that, and also a group of 4 could work quite nicely together for these kind of opening 50, 60, 70 kilometres. Tiffany Keep looks like she's settled into quite a nice rhythm now, and she's going to just keep plugging away and hope that Jo Tinley manages to make contact with her, and then she can share the workload a bit once Jo's there.
14 seconds is the advantage for Keep, the South African rider for Das Hutchinson. It's on our chasers who are behind. One rider from CJ O'Shea Racing is in that chasing duo. Blue skies ahead. You can see that Tiffany Keep, the big aim was to try and get into the breakaway. She's already in a racing skin suit just with the arm warmers. She doesn't have a rain jacket on, she's not got a gilet on. She's ready and waiting to try and get herself into this breakaway, and meanwhile the things are certainly starting to change. You've got Bexy Dew, who's going back to the back of the peloton at the start of the convoy just to discard of any unwanted clothing.
It also looks like she's got aero shoe covers on as well, rather than rain shoe covers. So even though it is wet and there will be spray being flicked up from the road, she really has gone all out to make sure that she's as aerodynamic as possible in her clothing. So I think it was quite obvious that they intended to get into a breakaway and make a move up the road today.
There's the transporter bridge. One or 2 transporter bridges in the UK, the other one in Newport, South Wales.
Looks as though Jo Tinley might have actually been swallowed up by the peloton, but her teammate is now one of these 2 riders that's about to make contact. And then they'll have a nice working group of 3. So 3 British riders, or 3 British continental teams represented by the riders in this move now.
Great job from the chasing duo, number 164, who's just bridged across. This is Maddie Leach. Terrific job from Maddie Leach. Don't forget, last year she was a huge feature on the Greater Manchester stage, the 2024 Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. She's on the blue bike, the Hansling bike of Hansling Alba Development Road Team. Also there, number 172, that's Lucy Gadd with the black jersey and the red bike from Smurfit Westbrook cycling team. And of course, the rider who has been out for a couple of kilometres on her own, Tiffany Keep, the South African from Das Hutchinson. There's a reminder of their numbers and the riders who are at the head of the race. And already, early on into the race, Tiffany Keep opting for a gel, keeping herself well fueled, well topped up.
Absolutely, and especially in these kind of conditions where it is a bit cooler, maybe not, you know, the high June temperatures that we would hope for. It's really important to start eating early and then continue eating through the stage. And one thing that's always said in a stage race is you're not just eating for the day, that day that you're racing, you're eating for the coming days as well. So it's really important to keep on top of your nutrition throughout the stage.
All well controlled at the head of the peloton. Just to run through the riders who are in the jerseys and who will be wearing which jersey today, because of course yesterday Kim LaCourt took a clean sweep of all of the jerseys that she could possibly take. Of course, she's wearing the green jersey as the leader of the general classification. She's leading that classification 5 seconds ahead of Kristen Faulkner, while she actually leads the red jersey as the points classification leader. That actually is being worn and borrowed by, kept warm, let's say, by Linda Zanetti of UNOX Mobility. When you actually take a look down at that classification, Kristen Faulkner in second in the points classification, Wiebes in third, Kat Ferguson in fourth, Linda Zanetti sitting in fifth. But by default, because Faulkner is a USA national champion, jersey overrides borrowing a jersey. Lorena Wiebes, of course, the European champion, the same rule applies, and Kat Ferguson is wearing the white jersey as the leader of the youth classification, so you'll be seeing Linda Zanetti in the red points classification.
And at the left turn, the time advantage for our three leaders over the peloton is now 13 seconds, 13 seconds, with 9.2 kilometres covered.
So at the moment, this trio are holding quite a nice gap of 13 seconds. It's not really going out at the moment, but the riders at the front of the peloton are looking relatively relaxed. So I think they'll kind of keep check on it. But at the moment, I wouldn't think that they'd be concerned about letting that gap just grow a little bit and to give those three riders a bit of room at the front of the race.
"13 seconds for our leaders," and we take a look at Kim LaCourt in that green jersey. After the crash, she's made her way back through the convoy. She's at the back of the peloton. She's being looked after by two of her teammates. One of the teammates was the Belgian rider who initially stopped, Fava Bastiansens, the 27-year-old. While she's looking like she's okay after that crash, it was quite concerning at first, Hayley, that she'd suffered some injury. But by the looks of things, the way she is on the bike, looking okay. And she will have been checked over by the race doctor too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the crash did happen early, so there was no need to kind of panic and worry about getting back on the bike as soon as possible, because there was a lot of race distance left where she would be able to make her way back to the peloton, and she did also have a teammate with her, so it did mean that there was plenty of time to kind of take things a bit steadily, make sure she got up slowly and just was checked over to make sure that everything was okay. She was kind of holding the base of her back a little bit, and I was a bit worried that she'd maybe suffered a bit of an injury, but sometimes it's the shock of the initial impact, and you just kind of need to stand up and check yourself over a little bit before making the decision that you are okay and you can get back on the bike. And hopefully, you know, things are quite sedate at the moment in the peloton, so it'll just give her an opportunity to take it easy, spin her legs a little bit, and not be straight into something that's going to require a really high power output and a lot of effort straight away.
I guess it's also the shock as well of crashing unexpectedly. As you say, it was a wide road, there was no danger, it was a good road to be on, there was no real stress in the peloton at that point, but it's just the shock and the initial shock of crashing too.
Yeah, exactly. There was nothing. I think that's one of the things sometimes with cycling. If you know there's a difficulty coming up, then you're paying really close attention and you're alert. Whereas in that scenario, there wasn't anything that struck me as the riders thinking, oh, I have to be really aware here. And so potentially she was just thinking about, oh, maybe I want to take a gilet off, or maybe I'll take a gel, and then something happened in front of her that she couldn't avoid. And as you said, it's the shock of 1 minute being quite comfortable on your bike and then the next minute being thrown to the ground, and sometimes you just kind of need to stand up, have a little mental check that everything's okay before assessing that actually you are okay, and you can get back on the bike and make your way back to the peloton.
A little bit of conversation, Maddie Leach just trying to get this group organised and working well together, and just denoting which side you want to be rolling through on.
Yeah, so Maddie's really probably the most experienced of the three riders in this breakaway. She's done a lot of racing. She knows how to race. She knows how to ride in a breakaway as well. So she'll just be talking to the girls and saying, you know, the wind is coming from this direction, so we should, change this way or stagger ourselves in this way, just to conserve as much energy as possible and give ourselves the best opportunity for making a successful breakaway.
Brilliant to see so many people and fans who've come out roadside, and we saw earlier on there was a number of schools that were roadside. I saw they had the banners saying throw your bottle here. Yeah, they wanted to really get themselves involved, which is brilliant. And I think it's always been the case. You know, you've raced in this race in the past, Hayley, and you know exactly what it feels like being on the roadside and knowing how important it is to have the primary schools, the high schools roadside, and giving them the opportunity to see the best riders in the world pass.
One thing that always strikes me about racing in the UK, racing the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women or Ride London or whatever it is, are these crowds that we've just seen. It's amazing going past the schools and having children stood there with banners cheering. One of the times when I raced in this race, I ended up in a very long solo breakaway, and
time travelers.
Exactly. Yeah. The way that I thrive in these races by myself, out the front hopefully rather than the back. But the encouragement from the school children, just, it's really special. It's really special. I can't quite put into words what it means to have these children standing there with their banners, shouting at you, cheering for you as you make your way past. It's great.
How much of a boost does it give you when you're in the peloton? I mean, when you're out solo, it must feel incredible that everybody is cheering, especially for you at that moment in time. And here we see another primary school. It's brilliant to see they've all made banners, and I'm sure that's been a project that the school can use, knowing that this race is coming to the local region and coming by. They can use it as a way to add it into their curriculum. And we see there, just by the way, 48 seconds now for our leading trio.
Yeah, so the peloton really have relaxed and are comfortable to let these three go up the road. So this is quite a nice situation now. These three can work well together, just keep a nice consistent tempo, and the peloton can also relax as well. But yeah, I think it's great for, especially to see these women's races coming through as well. It's great for the young girls in the schools, because traditionally a lot of the sport that we would see more on the television is men's sport. It's only recently that some of the women's races have been given as much airtime, and it's really nice for young females to stand at the side of the road and cheer on some of the best female riders in the world.
We've passed by the Teesmouth National Nature Reserve moments ago. followed by the River Tees inland. We'll pass through the Teesmouth National Nature Reserve, a top location for wading birds and seals. We've also got 20,000 individual waterfowl visit from Teesmouth during the year. Durham University, the research since 1960s has enabled the Teesmouth to make an enormous contribution to the international scientific understanding of wading birds. Into our next host borough, into Stockton-on-Tees. Of course, straddles the ceremonial counties of County Durham and North Yorkshire. We'll be entering into the first of the unique towns, Billingham, very shortly. The borough actually has 6 unique towns: Billingham, Norton, Inglebury, Berwick, Stockton, Thornaby and Yarm. We'll be passing through Yarm a little later on too. Not just cycling that is a big attraction here, and of course we've got our 2 professionals in Harry and Charlie Tanfield from this area, but you've also got the Teesside Tornado, Team GB's Olympic sprinter Richard Kilty. He's also a world champion, double European champion, competed in the 4x100 metre relay in Paris last year. 55 seconds now for our trio. This is a good advantage that they're building, but they'll need to keep this cohesion going and keep working well together and growing this advantage if they want any chance of staying away until the end.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's why having someone like Maddie Leach within this trio is good, because she has the experience and the knowledge to keep them working well together and keep them motivated. And the 3 girls will know each other as well from racing together on the British National Circuit, so it's nice to have riders who know each other within a breakaway, because I think it adds to the cohesion.
Closer look at Lucy Gadd. New bikes this year for the team, Ribble bikes that they're racing on, new equipment to get used to.
It's always one of those things at the start of the season where you go on a training camp, you normally have your new equipment for the year, there's input from the team to kind of make sure that everything's perfect and the bikes are set up correctly and all of the measurements are right. You know, you might have a bike fit, things like that, and it's really important to kind of get used to your new equipment, because yes, you know, at the end of the day these girls can ride a bike really well, they can ride whatever bike they're given, but it does always take a little bit of getting used to maybe a different geometry and just different stiffnesses of the frames as well. There are subtleties between different bikes and a different style of bike, a climbing bike versus a more aerodynamic bike, and it does just take a little bit of getting used to.
Well, beautiful shots here as we take a look at the wonderful countryside here. The helicopter coming in to refuel, be back later in the race. It's given us some wonderful shots thus far and perfect landing. It's not a bad view up there in a helicopter following a race, I can tell you that. Absolutely wonderful.
And the sun has come out again.
Fortunately for us, fortunately for the riders, more importantly. "55 seconds for our leaders, 5.6 kilometres of racing to go. You can see for Maddie Leach, she's not just a top road rider, but she's also a fantastic track rider, and you can just see how comfortable she is, how confident she is in her situation and what she's doing, and also just guiding these 2 riders, Tiffany Keep and Lucy Gadd, and just having that control. And she's also a very strong rider who you shouldn't underestimate.
No, absolutely not. She's yeah, as you said, she's an excellent track rider as well as being really experienced on the road, and she's a great rider to have as a breakaway companion, because she will keep working, she'll contribute well to the breakaway, as well as having the knowledge of possibly the right ways that the riders should be investing their effort. So it's great to see her up the road.
Several teams who are just controlling the gap to the trio up front. In the breakaway, Nina Burton in the pink jersey on the far left-hand side. RVF Education Oatley, of course, looking after the interests of Kristen Faulkner. We've also got Eleanor Backstead of UAE Team ADQ at the front. She was on the far right-hand side. She really is becoming one of the super domestiques.
She's a constant sight at the front of the race when you've got a Team UAE ADQ rider there, just as she was for her previous teams last year. But she's often marshalling the front of the peloton for her team. She's an excellent teammate to have in domestique.
It's impressive, isn't it? She's incredibly strong. She's incredibly vigilant. So Lara Gillespie also doing some work on the front, the Irish rider on the far right-hand side. You've got several teams who are represented up towards the front, Hayley, including Visma Lisa Bike. You've also got AG Insurance Soudal. You can see that they're just wanting to make sure that they don't allow these three riders to have too much of an advantage. But given the fact that these roads are constantly up and down, a little bit of undulation, some narrow roads, you want to make sure that you're protecting your leaders and keeping them up towards the front and out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely, because as we saw earlier on, if you're more towards the back, you're more at risk of something happening in front of you. Not necessarily making a mistake yourself, but something happening in front of you and you being caught out, and that can lead to some panic. So with the nature of the roads, and also the fact that the roads are wet currently, hopefully they'll dry up later, the teams are just wanting to make sure that their team leaders are kept safe and keeping an eye on things. And, you know, also they'll be watching out for each other. They'll be looking after their team leaders. So quite often, if you have 4 or 5 riders in the team, you might have 2 or 3 of your domestiques in front of your team leader, but then you'll probably also have one just behind, so that if something were to happen, there is a rider watching the team leader from behind and just keeping an eye on what's going on, and then they can communicate on the radio that there's been a problem if the riders ahead maybe don't realise.
We've left Billingham, part of the borough of Stockton-on-Tees, actually a village. But after World War II, a town centre was built up. The town's actually been linked to the chemical industry since the early 1900s. It's an important centre for the production of chemicals used in agriculture, and in fact so synonymous with the industry. One of the Billingham's 2 football teams is named the Billingham Sanothia. Among the famous people from Billingham are Jamie Bell, famous for playing Billy Elliot, former England and Manchester United footballer Gary Pallister, and Diane Udale, better known as Jet in the original Gladiators. Fantastic programme.
Yeah, I was just laughing to myself about Gladiators. I do well remember the original. I went to see it live when I was a child. I did.
Oh, I'm very jealous.
I did. My mum had a big foam finger. We sat in the crowd.
I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, I'm really showing my age now, aren't I?
Yeah, likewise. Didn't go and see it live, but we did used to turn the settee upside down and make our own obstacle course, much to Mum and Dad's delight. But you know, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Lizzie Dignan on the middle, in the middle of the road.
She's making it look positively tropical there with her race suit unzipped. I know that she likes the cold, wet conditions, but I didn't quite expect that. I do once remember actually sitting on the start line for one of the Belgian races in February, and I was absolutely freezing with long sleeve jersey, full length gloves on, basically almost every item of clothing I thought it was acceptable to wear in a race. And then Lizzie rocked up in a short sleeve jersey, shorts and no gloves, and I think I was shivering just looking at her. But actually there's it's almost kind of a mental play as well doing that, because if riders are sat on the start line struggling with the fact that it's cold or being a bit worried about the conditions, and then somebody turns up basically looking completely comfortable in their surroundings and with what's about to happen, you kind of know that they mean business, and it's a bit of a mental edge sometimes.
I was going to say, does it give a bit of a mental edge, psychologically, how does that give you the advantage if you are just there in your shorts and jersey or your race suit? You don't. Some riders, even without any mitts on,
yeah, exactly.
Even if it's just a track mitt, does that give the psychological edge?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, that was my first professional season as well, when that happened. So it's a real standout memory for me, and I think it just shows confidence in yourself, in your performance, and what you're about to do. And I think even if you don't necessarily feel that confidence, doing things that portray you as confident is definitely it can be quite nerve-wracking for some of the riders around you, and ultimately it does help.
And caution, road narrows for the peloton and technical descent. Technical descent for the peloton.
Brilliant to have that insight and the information from race radio from our commissaire Julia. It's absolutely terrific to have this technology to be able to hear what the teams are hearing inside a team car. This is the exact information that is being relayed from the commissaire, from race radio and our radio tour.
Yeah,
to the teams, and they can then relay that information to the riders then, that this is the situation, this is what's going to happen in a moment. You're going to have the safety motorbikes passing you. Make sure you give them some space because they need to get ahead to keep the road safe up ahead for you.
Exactly, and the level of information that's passed on in this race is excellent. The riders should be made aware of all of the kind of danger points that they might be about to face, and as you said, what happens is the commissaire delivers the information over race radio to the teams, and then the team directors can pass on the information that they've just received to each of their riders, because all of the riders in the team will have their own radio, so the information can then be passed on. And it means that in theory, any kind of danger points, big potholes, if there happens to be a vehicle that's found its way onto the course or is parked by the side of the road or anything like that, that information can be passed on to the riders, which minimises any risk within the race.
And we saw yesterday a slight incident with Kristen Faulkner when she made the right-hand turn. There was the traffic island and she misjudged the corner. There was the safety marshal with the whistle and the flag just before that to indicate the traffic island. But all information, I was speaking to a couple of the sports directors last night, and they were saying that all of the information that was on that corner was brought up in the team managers meeting, and then they had information sent to them via a PDF, a slide, let's say, with all of that information, and also highlighted on VeloViewer. So there's so many obstacles. Of course, we're racing on traditionally what are roads for civilians and for everyday people. These are where they're driving home, driving to work, driving on these roads, and so our stadium is the open road.
Yeah, absolutely. The race organisation does absolutely everything they can to minimise any risk. Of course, riders when they're in the race, they will have looked at the tech manual before they come to the race. They will have made notes about anything of note, basically. So be that a climb or a sprint, but also a danger point, if there's a railway crossing, if there's a turn that's deemed to be more dangerous than perhaps a normal turn. They will have made those notes, but then within a race situation, when you've been working really hard for several hours, it can be difficult to keep track of that. That's why you then have the race radio, and you have the commissaire relaying the information live, so to speak, to the teams, and the teams relaying it to the riders. But again, there's always the chance that a race radio might not work for 100% of the race. There's sometimes signalling issues, especially if you're in rural areas, and sometimes, maybe a battery just dies, and that kind of thing does happen. I've been in race situations where my radio's been working, and then I realise that it's been silent for 10 or 15 minutes, and it turns out that actually there has been an issue with the radio. So
you don't know exactly what happened yesterday.
Will teams have spare race radios in the incident that you've just explained, that you've experienced? So, for example, there's a fault with it, or maybe there's something going on. Let's take a listen to race radio again
and in the
see
leading group,
the
rider
information.
164 is calling for her team car. That's Hansling Alba in the leading group.
Yeah, so there will often be spare race radios within a car. However, one thing that we see is that when you've got a breakaway like this, or like we had yesterday, when a gap gets to a certain level, which is a minute normally, they'll allow the team cars for the riders within the break to go in between the bunch and the break, but the gap has to be big enough to allow that to happen. Yesterday we never had a big enough gap for the team cars to go within that gap, so the riders in the breakaway wouldn't have had their own team cars to be able to call up for any assistance. So if there was, and I don't have the information, we don't know what happened, but if there had been some sort of issue with Kristen Faulkner's radio, it wouldn't have been possible for her to then get a replacement from her team. So you know, there are those kind of intricacies, and also sometimes with the way the British roads are, it can actually be quite difficult to move the team cars past the peloton to get into that gap between the breakaway and the bunch. So obviously we just heard on race radio that the rider from Das Hutchinson was trying to call up their team car, but actually if that team car is still stuck behind the peloton, that rider could be waiting a little while to find a convenient and safe, that's the most important thing, a safe point of the course for the cars to work their way up past these riders to then get into that gap and then service the rider, which is why we saw the Shimano neutral service car going to the rider.
Going to the rider, she was calling for the team car, and you can just see that the team car is attempting to come through the peloton now. That's the team of Hansling Alba Development Road team of Maddie Leach. She's wanting some help, some assistance, and the gap's big enough to do so. The fact that the gap is now 1 minute 46 to our leading trio, the team cars can be allowed into the gap, but trying to find a space which is optimal is pretty difficult.
You can see it just trying to move up. You can see those bikes kind of floating in the air on the left-hand side of the screen as the team car tries to get past. As you mentioned, the gap is big enough, but it's the complexity and the safety aspect. The drivers are so experienced, they know how to move through these pelotons. They'll use their horn to indicate that they're there, and then the onus is then kind of on the riders to safely move to one side of the road as well. So there's a lot of responsibility on the driver of the team car, but there is also some responsibility on the riders. And what you'll often get is the more experienced riders in the peloton will shout, car coming through, stay left, or whatever it is, just to indicate to the other riders that they need to move, they need to be aware, and just let those cars pass safely.
Onto wider roads. Marta Lack at the front for SD Works Pro Time. Moving forward is Kristen Faulkner, the Olympic champion.
And information for teams, we have one team car passing the peloton on the right-hand side. Please ask your riders to cooperate with this passage. Thank you.
Well, pretty safe passage there from Hansling Alba Development Road team. Team car got by the sports director Bob Lyons, directing the Scottish-based squad. Maddie Leach was the rider who was calling for the team car. She wanted the assistance. She was asking to the commissaires who were behind the breakaway that she wanted to call for a team car.
Sometimes it can be quite difficult because you can get assistance from the neutral service vehicle, but it really depends what that rider wants. For example, if she needs an extra item of clothing, then that will be kept in her team car. If she wants her own personal nutrition, personal bottle, something like that, then that will also be in her team car. So ideally she wants assistance from her own car. And you know, the riders kind of moving to the side and and letting that team car through. Ultimately, all riders will want their own team car to be able to get to them if they're in a breakaway, and so everyone understands that as long as it's safe to do so, moving to the side and allowing the team car past is what needs to happen as, you know, efficiently and as safely as possible. Safety obviously being the kind of main consideration.
Blackboard showing 2 minutes and 10 seconds to our leading trio. Just to note today on the left-hand side by Hannah on the back of the motorbike with the Blackboard. They've got a really good advantage now. Down the centre of the road in the blue jerseys, you can see that it's AG Insurance Soudal who are one of the teams who are contributing. The yellow jersey with the black gilet, Visma Lisa bike also putting one rider up towards the front. You've got several teams, and particularly our big World Tour teams, EF Education only in the pink jersey. They're the only pro team who are in the race, second division if you like.
What's quite noticeable is that actually a lot of those teams have kind of amassed at the front. Bike change here.
Well, there you see, Maddie Leach is having a bike change here. She's been waiting a while, but you see that it was a relatively slick bike change for Maddie Leach.
That's clearly
underway.
That's clearly why she wanted her own team vehicle, because you don't necessarily want to jump onto a neutral service bike if it's possible to get your own bike, your own spare bike off your team car.
And of course, Shimano Neutral Service, they're the blue car that are up ahead. They've got their spare bikes as well, but as you say, if you've got your own team bike, if you've got your own spare bike, it's better to have that. It fits you well, you've got the same pedals.
I was going to say pedal system. The pedal system is a big consideration, because if there are riders using a specific type of pedal that they happen to get on better with, there's no guarantee that that pedal system is going to be available on a neutral service bike.
What do you do then? Because there's so many different pedal systems. You've got Wahoo Speed Play, you've got Look pedals, you've got Shimano pedals, you've got Time pedals. What happens on a neutral service bike if you haven't got the right cleats?
Yeah, because quite often the neutral service bikes will have the more common pedal types. They'll probably have the Shimano pedals on those bikes. So if you, I think it depends on quite how extreme your situation is. If you really can't continue, you'll grab a neutral service bike. You'll try to rest your feet on those pedals and get some sort of traction on those pedals, just so that you can keep moving until your own team car can get to you. I think that's the main thing. I think a lot of the time it's the situation that you just try and minimize any losses and keep moving as long as possible until your team car is able to get to you. Even if it then requires 2 bike changes, you might change to a neutral bike. And then when your bike is then available, you'll have another change to your own bike.
Well, she's got some work to do, Maddie Leach, to get back to her breakaway companions of Lucy Gadd and Tiffany Keep. You can see this is a huge moment for this team to be in such a race for Hansling Alba, because you can see in the passenger seat they've got media representation from their team. There's lots of big interest for these teams.
Absolutely, and I saw yesterday that other of the British Continental teams, they had some of their sponsors at this race. It's a great opportunity for the British teams to kind of repay the sponsors and the commitment that the sponsors have shown to the team by bringing them to a massive World Tour race, allowing them to sit in a team car, follow the race, and give them the experience of you know, this is what it's like, this is what we're doing week in, week out.
One rider from CJ O'Shea is trying to bridge across. By the way, two of their riders no longer in the race. One of those, Amélie Fortin, the Canadian rider, didn't take to the start this morning. Freya Knox didn't finish the stage yesterday. We've got 107 riders remaining in the race. We also had one rider from her cycling team who didn't finish the stage yesterday. That was Danique Bram, a 29-year-old Dutch rider. Overall, 19 teams in the race, 12 World Tour teams, Women's World Tour teams, 1 pro team, 5 continental teams and 1 national team. That's the Great Britain national team made up of Jess Roberts, Anna Morris, Flora Perkins, Millie Cousins, Ella McLean-Howell and April Tacey. Seems as though the breakaway duo up ahead of Lucy Gadd and Tiffany Keep have almost been waiting for Maddie Leach here, waiting for her to come back after that mechanical problem in the bike change, and now they're going to have a breakaway trio once again.
Yeah, I think they did obviously keep riding, keep making sure that they were working well together, but maybe just ease the pressure off the pedals a little bit just to allow Maddie Leach back, because having that one extra rider is definitely beneficial. It's an extra 50% to go from 2 to 3. So just easing off a bit, and it gives them a little bit of a breather, a little bit of extra rest, and ultimately the gap is large enough to have allowed them to do that.
An opportunity for Maddie Leach to have a little chat with Bob Lyons, hand over a gel.
And what we'll see here as well is that currently it is only that Hansling-Alba team car that is in that gap, and so they will also assist the other two riders a little bit, because it's in their interest for this breakaway to keep working smoothly, to be successful, and so you will see the Hansling-Alba team potentially give bottles, give nutrition to these other two riders as well.
And you also saw Lucy Gadd just giving her long finger gloves, some spare clothing she doesn't want anymore to the squad of Hansling-Alba development. So there's a great mutual respect from all of these teams, and they're willing to help out, because at some point the favour will be repaid.
I think that's one thing we see a lot in cycling. Teams will often help each other if they can, whether it's within the stage or even at some of the race hotels. Maybe there have been problems with bikes or spare parts or something like that. Teams will help each other because the kindness will be repaid, and ultimately at some point everyone is going to need some sort of assistance, so it's in everyone's best interests. Actually, one notable thing last year was that one of the teams unfortunately ended up having their bike stolen before one of the stages, and what happened was all the other teams banded together, found spare bikes, spare frames in the correct sizes, and lent them to the riders of that team in order to enable those riders to continue in the race. So we really do see this camaraderie within cycling.
Riders starting to get rid of their arm warmers, their warm weather clothing, rain jackets. Certainly a big change here, Hayley, from what we saw earlier on in Hartlepool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks to me as though the roads are drying as well, which will make things a lot safer for the riders. So I think everyone's just going to be a lot happier in general with these conditions improving.
2 minutes for our leading trio, 81.1 kilometres of racing remaining. When you take a look at this kind of stage, and given the fact that a lot of the climbs and the undulation really starts within the final 40 kilometres, how do you envisage a day like today going? Because perhaps yesterday was a little bit of a surprise for some riders, and given the fact that a lot of the riders who were going for the general classification maybe missed the move yesterday on that climb up Langburns Bank, and right now they're over 2 minutes behind, and they've got a lot of work to do to have to try and close that advantage or deficit.
Yeah, I think yesterday with the stage having been short, it's a lot more unpredictable, which makes it exciting for us, but it means that riders have to be constantly vigilant. Today is what I would call more traditional in terms of the stage length and maybe how things will proceed. So as we both maybe predicted at the start of the day, there has been a breakaway. The breakaway has been given a decent advantage, 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes, but nothing that's of concern to the peloton. So the big teams, we can now see at the front, they're marshalling the front, they're making sure that the gap is controlled, so they won't let it go out too much, just in case there's then a difficulty to close it later on. So they'll hold it at a kind of manageable, somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes. You know, you've got the riders from AG Insurance Dudal there just on the right-hand side, making sure that they're at the front, keeping an eye on things, because they have the race leader in Kim LaCourte. So what will happen is, I would imagine they'd allow this gap to hold at about 2 minutes, and then as they approach the more difficult and more important parts of the stage later on, we'll see that gap start to shrink. And then my prediction is maybe the first ascent of Saltburn Bank is where we're going to see some real fireworks starting.
Do you think that could be decisive?
I think it will be. I think the nature of not just that climb itself, because it is short, but the lead into that climb. You've got a fast descent, you've got a sweeping left-hand corner at the bottom of the descent, you then have a short stretch along the seafront, and then you've got a tight left-hand corner which goes directly into a really steep gradient. And it's really important to, if you're going to use your small ring on that climb, which I think most of the riders will be, it's important to get that shift into the little ring completed on the flat section next to the sea before you hit the steep gradient, because if they start trying to change chainring once they're already on that steep climb, there's a real risk of them dropping a chain or grounding to a halt or something like that happening. So there's some real technicalities with how you take that climb, and then you're straight onto a really steep gradient, several hairpins, and it really is an all-out max 45, 46 second effort up that climb. And if you're out of position, if you've been gapped a little bit on the fast descent, you're going to have a real tough job to get back on terms.
I'm a big fan of the route that the race organisation, the route director and the race director have created over the 4 days of this stage race. We've just passed through Sadberg, the village's name, which actually comes from Old Danish for flat hill. Really describes the village, and of course its views. It's almost it's a funny one, isn't it? We were talking about it earlier on. There was lots that had come from Old Norwegian, Old Danish in this particular area.
It's funny calling it a flat hill as well, because talking about Saltburn Bank a minute ago, one of the sprint points on today's stage, the second sprint of the stage, is at the top of Saltburn Bank the first time they go up there. So normally you'd associate these sprint points with being flat, but actually this sprint is up quite a hard climb.
And safety information for teams, please pay attention. At kilometre 39.1, that's 39.1. On a left-hand turn, there is standing water covering potholes in the road.
It's brilliant to get this information, knowing the safety warnings that are up ahead and are being relayed to our sports directors, that they can then give that to the teams and the riders. Each and every rider's got a race radio, so they've got that information directly into their earpiece.
If ever I had a bike change or needed a bike change in a race, the one thing that I would almost make sure to grab would be my cycling computer, because you really can lose track of the distances if you don't have your cycling computer. And as we just heard on race radio, obviously the commissaire was saying it's at kilometre 39.1 that there's that standing water, and so you kind of rely on all of this technology on the race radio, the information being transmitted, and then your cycling computer to tell you where you are on the stage as well, in order to keep track of everything and make sure you've got the accurate information.
Given the fact that we're racing in the UK, I guess everyone will have kilometres on their bike computer, right? Keep it continental, it's what they're used to throughout the whole season.
You would think so. I always race with kilometres. I think most of the British riders who race on the continent race with kilometres. It makes the most sense. I have known people who have steadfastly stuck 2 miles, which does make life challenging, and there have been points in team meetings where we've been discussing courses and different features of courses, and people have then asked, well, what's that in miles? And
and it gets to a point where you say, oh, just use kilometres, please. Which, sorry to any of the British listeners who obviously work in miles, but when you're racing on the continent more commonly than racing in the UK, it just makes a lot more sense to work in kilometres.
Let's run through some of the teams. We're seeing the same 5 or 6 teams who are keeping a control of our breakaway trio as their lead now grows to 2 minutes and 20 seconds inside 80 kilometres to go. UAE team ADQ made up of Elena Backstead, Sofia Bertizzolo, Eleonora Gasparini. You've also got Laura Gillespie, Caroline Swinkles and Dominika Wlodarczyk, one of 5 national champions in the race. Wlodarczyk, the national champion of Poland, the 24-year-old. And I have to say, yesterday, I don't know about you, Hayley, but I was mightily impressed with Dominika Wlodarczyk.
She had an excellent race. She was up the front, she was visible. Obviously, that first Queen of the Mountains points, she only just missed out on being the first across the line there. She had an excellent race.
Just going through one of our low signal areas. We're bringing you the race via 5G. It's terrific to have live coverage from start to finish of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. The trees out into, now that the sun's bearing down on the riders. Let's talk a little bit about what the situation, the scenario might unfold, or what might happen on a day like today, on a stage like today, where you've got several teams who are controlling and patrolling the front of a peloton. You've got EF Education Oatly. Of course, their big interest is in Kristen Faulkner. She sits second overall in the general classification. They're the team in the pink jerseys on the far left-hand side. It's been Nina Burton for the majority of the day so far who's been on the front, the Luxembourgish rider, the 23-year-old. But they're also a team that's made up of Letizia Borghese, Sarah Roy, who's won 2 stages of this race during her career. You've also got Mira Carnarvon and Babette van der Wolf. They're being led by the sports director Daniel Home-Fodder. What, for them, they know that they can try and ride and help Kristen Faulkner into the leader's jersey by the end of today.
Absolutely. I think nobody will be particularly concerned about the first sprint points. So potentially we'll see this breakaway still ahead of the peloton when you get to that first sprint, because the points are not so much of a concern for that. But I think we'll see the gaps starting to come down by then, because the teams will be more concerned about the features that come shortly after that. So you've got the first Category 1 climb of Marske Lane, which is a climb we take on twice today. But basically, once you get to that point, you're starting to see more punchy climbs, more opportunities for the race to split up. So I think by that point, the teams are going to be thinking about wanting to make sure this breakaway has been reeled in. And I do think that it's the first ascent of Saltburn Bank, where possibly we're going to see some of the key protagonists maybe try to split the race again, actually.
We'll get to that first Queen of the Mountain in 40 kilometres time. We'll get to the bottom of the climb with 33.6 kilometres to go. They'll crest the top with 31.9 kilometres to go, and it's our first categorised 1 Queen of the Mountain of this race so far. And as Hayley said, they'll take on Marske Lane on 2 occasions. The next one they'll crest with 13.2 kilometres to go, so it's pretty close to the finish line, and it can have a huge impact, never mind just Saltburn Bank.
It is, and interestingly, it's 1.9 kilometres at 5.4% average. And it was a 1.9 kilometre climb that decided yesterday's stage. The climb yesterday was a little bit steeper, and it had the really steep part at the bottom of the climb. But we saw yesterday that a climb of 2 kilometres in length can do a lot of damage, and they take this climb on twice. And we know that the riders who obviously performed very well on that climb yesterday were Kristen Faulkner, were Kim LaCourte. They were the 2 riders who managed to get away. So actually, EF Education Oatly know that if they can get Kristen Faulkner to that climb in a good position, then actually she's then in a really strong position in terms of maintaining her second place on GC, or potentially even moving up and taking that leader's jersey.
2 minutes and 28 seconds, 72.7 kilometres of racing. A little reminder of our riders in the breakaway. You've got Tiffany Keep in the blue jersey with the green flex on the far left-hand side. You've also got Our rider Maddie Leach, number 164. In the red jersey, that's Lucy Gadd of Smurfit West Rock. 3 British Continental teams who are in the breakaway. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to our local viewers to stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Starting in Hartlepool, the riders will be racing to Saltburn by the Sea. 107 riders remain in the race from the 19 teams, 12 Women's World Tour teams, a pro team, 5 continental teams and the Great Britain national team. Yesterday we had a terrific stage with Kim LaCourt winning the stage and now leading the general classification. But first up, let's take a little look at what the riders have to take on today on stage 2.
Host to stage 2 of the tour, with a race covering 114.3 kilometres from Hartlepool to Saltburn by the Sea. After circling around Middlesbrough, the riders hit the first sprint of the day at Guisborough. The route then hits the climb at Marske Lane before tackling the famous hairpins of Saltburn Bank. There is an intermediate sprint as the riders cross the finish line for the first time, and then they repeat the loop before returning to Saltburn by the Sea for the stage finish. There is an intermediate sprint as the riders cross the finish line for the first time, and then they repeat the loop before returning to Saltburn by the Sea for the stage finish.
Well, there we have it, stage 2. Earlier on today, the riders got underway at 10:45 local time from Hartlepool. There was a few showers earlier on this morning, but they had an unconventional sign-on. They were signing on an old warship. The race was officially started by the race director as they left Hartlepool. Rod Ellingworth out of the sunroof of the car. Raquel Barbieri, a big day on the hands of Picnic Postanel. Megan Jastrab, their highest placed rider in the general classification. The flag was waved and through kilometre 0 after a 5.2 kilometre neutralised section. And it was pretty calm to begin with. That was until several of the British Continental teams wanted to try and force a breakaway. And behind, meanwhile, there was a crash which included several riders. One of those being the leader in the general classification, Kim LaCourt, in the green jersey on the far left-hand side. Also Jess Roberts suffering in that crash, one of the riders from the Great Britain national team. Tiffany Keep in the blue jersey with the green flex on, she made a move and Joe Tinley tried to respond to try and come across. In the end, she was swallowed up, but 2 more riders bridged across to Tiffany Keep, the South African rider. Maddie Leach on the blue bike from Hansling Alba Development Road Team, as well as the rider in the red and black jersey, that's Lucy Gadd. Maddie Leach required a bike change. A team car came to assist her at that bike change. She rejoined the front of the race, the leading duo just edging off the pace a little bit before she rejoined in the lead. Their lead so far has been over 2 minutes of an advantage. It's been a very strong performance. And we have 3 riders. 2 minutes and 20 seconds. We join live pictures. Maddie Leach, Tiffany Keep and Lucy Gadd, who now continue to lead the race. Behind, it's been several UCI Women's World Tour teams who've been patrolling the advantage of the leading trio, including our pro team, EF Education, Oatley. Of course, looking after the interests of the Olympic road race champion, Kristen Faulkner. Stage of 114.3 kilometres. First big moment of the day. That will come in Guisborough, the intermediate sprint with 40.5 kilometres to go before heading into the first Queen of the Mountain of the day, the first Category 1 climb at Marske Lane with 33.6 kilometres to go. We're inside the final 70 kilometres, 2:39 for the leaders. Thanks for joining. This is the 10th edition of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Alongside me, Hannah Walker, is Hayley Simmons. This is a really strong advantage now for our 3 leaders.
Yeah, and they're working really nicely together. We saw that after Maddie Leach had her bike change, the other 2 riders did keep riding, but eased off the pedals a little bit, giving her the opportunity to make her way back to them to form this trio again, because there's a big advantage for them having 3 riders rather than the 2, and they are cooperating really nicely and just maintaining that gap that they've got that's between 2 and 3 minutes. Maddie's such an experienced head as well to have in this breakaway. She's very knowledgeable. She's been in a lot of races, both on the road and the track, and she's actually, I would almost call her kind of probably most likely the kind of captain of this breakaway. She'll be communicating really well with the other riders, making sure that they're working well together, making sure that they're changing in the correct direction that favours them most in terms of where the wind's coming from, and just all these little things that help them save as much energy as possible in order to maintain their advantage for as long as possible.
You can see Anina Attasalo, who's one of the riders on the front. She's got the white helmet with the navy blue stripe down it. She's the Finnish national road champion in the full black gilet, black shorts, gold bike, gold Ridley. One of 5 national champions who are in the race, including Faulkner, the USA national champion, Lecourt, the Mauritian champion, Wodacek, the Polish champion, Sanara Grove, the South African road race champion, and the aforementioned Attasalo.
It's nice to see Kim Lecourt just sat behind 2 of her teammates there. At the moment, she looks all right after that early crash where she came down after only a few kilometres of racing, actually. But at the moment, she looks like she's it doesn't look obviously as though she's in difficulty or suffering too much, so she's just nicely tucked in behind 2 of her teammates there.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that she was checked over thoroughly by the race doctor, making sure that she was indeed okay. She always had a teammate with her as well, and that was always Father Bastiansen. Laura Gillespie's in good spirits, isn't she? The former Irish road race champion. You can see her there in that white jersey, just taken off the gilet, so clearly the temperatures have started to change. But what a season that Laura Gillespie's had. She's been pretty formidable. She's been a great addition to the World Tour side of UAE Team ADQ. She's learned a lot from their development team. It shows how important those development teams are as well, and giving riders that opportunity to learn, to gain the experience, to get that knowledge, and to take it step by step and not be thrown into the deep end.
Absolutely, and there's the opportunity on these development teams for the development arm, so to speak, to put some of their riders or one of their riders into a high level race with the World Tour team or whatever it is. So it gives those riders an opportunity to experience 1 or 2 of the races each season before potentially making the step up to the World Tour squad. So it's really nice to see those development teams now appearing on the women's side of the sport. They've been around a bit longer for the men. And yeah, as you said, it's giving these riders the opportunity to have that experience, maybe without the pressure initially. And Laura Gillespie is an excellent example of someone who's just really taken advantage of all of the opportunities she's been given, and she's having a really great season.
She certainly is having a great season. We pass through the beautiful market town, full of history, through Yarm, got the River Tees that flows through it, and it's one of, as you can see there, one of the most scenic towns in the region. Fans have come out in force. Got a great variety of places to eat and beautiful landmarks. You've got the historic High Street, you've got the viaduct in the 18th century town hall, plenty to do and see. Always pretty bustling, I have to say, on the High Street. You've got lots of independent shops, you've got restaurants, cafes, bars. No wonder it was named the winner of the 2020 Rising Star Award at the Great British High Street Awards. Town Hall is actually a Grade 2 listed building and has been newly refurbished this year. It includes a unique exhibition centre which celebrates the town's ancient connection to the River Tees and the location on the horseshoe bend of the river. Just nestled along the River Tees is Preston Park, the museum and the grounds, one of the region's major cultural destinations. The museum's currently undergoing an exciting transformation just to create a new extension that's going to allow nationally significant exhibitions to be shown.
We've got more fans out on the roadside up here cheering these riders as they go past, and just the atmosphere racing in the UK. We're lucky that the sun has now come out, but it doesn't matter what the weather's doing in these stages. You're always going to have people out cheering and just the encouragement, especially for these 3 riders in the breakaway. They all represent British teams, and being cheered like this from all the locals, from these school groups that have come out to watch the race come past, it really makes it special.
I always find Brits just love a live event. It doesn't matter what it is. If you can get involved, whether that's in sport or in music or in arts, if you can get involved in an event, they just love being at an event, seeing something happening live.
Yeah.
And they love to be a part of it. And if
Absolutely.
you can get involved in somewhere, and you saw the children there with the banners that they've made before coming out on the roadside, it's a thrill. And they're going to remember this day for a long, long time.
Yeah, and just the atmosphere is just is great. And I think especially in this part of the country, actually, over the years I've done quite a few hill climbs, very British thing, quite a few hill climbs in this kind of area. And even at 8 o'clock on a wet Sunday morning in October, you've got people out shouting and cheering and ringing cowbells, and it's just great. It's such a friendly atmosphere, encouraging and supportive, and it makes it really special.
I know we've got lots of international viewers. What's a hill climb? Because this is, as you mentioned, it is a very, very British discipline.
It is. Effectively, you ride from the bottom of a hill to the top of a hill as quickly as possible. Riders start at 1 minute intervals, so it's effectively an uphill time trial. A lot of the ones in the UK are quite short just because of the nature of our climbs. You do sometimes get some longer ones that might be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Some of the Welsh ones are a bit longer. But it's basically hurting yourself as much as possible in a short period of time going up a hill.
Talking about events, and if you are keen to attend a live event, the historic Yarm Fair, as the peloton pass through Yarm, takes place on the High Street every autumn. That's across 3 days, including a centuries-old event, the Riding of the Fair, which sees hundreds line the High Street to watch horses trot up and down on what is usually a very busy road. It's a big attraction in this part of the world. We've also got the hand-carved replica of the ancient canoe, which also features and represents the earliest signs of life in the town. Remains of the 1825 Stockton and Darlington Railway track, which celebrates its 200th birthday this year, runs along the tree line of Preston Park, and there's the footpath available to follow the route. Well, the rain jackets are off, and we can see the blue Queen of the Mountains jersey resplendent on the shoulders of Anuska Costa. Of course, she isn't the leader in that competition, although she is tied on points with Kim LaCourt, but due to the ranking of the jerseys, Kim LaCourt, of course, leading in the green jersey as the leader of the general classification, but Anuska Costa's 6 points in that classification. And you can see the Dutch rider who's on the front now in that blue jersey.
Yeah, so she'll possibly be looking for some points on one or both of the classified climbs we've got today, because she is currently tied with Kim LaCourt on points. So if she can actually take a few more points today, then that jersey will become hers in her own right, and she will then be able to continue wearing it for the rest of the race. Kim LaCourt holds 3 jerseys at the moment, the leader's jersey, the Queen of the Mountains jersey, and the points jersey, but of course she can only wear one, so she is wearing the green leader's jersey. And actually the points jersey, the sprinter's jersey, is actually currently being worn by the rider who I think is 5th in that classification, which is a bit of a kind of I think quite a unique thing. I'm not sure I've ever seen it passed down quite that far in a race before.
For anybody who maybe doesn't understand then, how can a rider who is sitting 5th in a classification be wearing a leader's jersey, of course borrowing it on behalf of the actual leader, Kim LaCourt, because we've got Kristen Fulton, who sits 2nd on 25 points. You've got Lorena Wiebes, who's on 12 points in 3rd. Kat Ferguson is on 9 points in 4th, and then Linda Zanetti, the 5th best rider in that classification, on 8 points.
Yeah, so obviously these leaders' jerseys are incredibly important, and if the rider was leading that classification, then normally they would take that jersey regardless of any other national champions jersey that they may normally be wearing. However, in this case, Kim LaCourt is leading 3 different classifications, so she takes the most prestigious jersey, which is obviously the race leader's jersey. However, Kristen Faulkner is the American national champion, and so because she actually isn't leading the points classification, her American champion's jersey trumps the points classification jersey, so to speak. And that's also the case with Lorena Wiebes, who's the European champion. And so basically the different jerseys are kind of, it's weighing up which becomes more important and prestigious, so to speak. And so the first rider who's almost available to wear that jersey is actually Zanetti, who's currently in 5th.
And of course, Kat Ferguson leading the best young rider classification, so you'll see her in a white jersey, not her traditional white and navy blue jersey of Movistar. And Iska Costa is borrowing and just keeping the jersey warm for Kim LaCourt. See her in that blue jersey in that classification. 6 points apiece for Kim LaCourt and Anuska Costa, 5 points for Kristen Faulkner and Dominika Wlodarczyk. Caroline Swinkels and Margot Vigi on 4 points, whilst Quintiton Odbianika on 3, with Rene Marcus and Alice Towers on 2, Anna Henderson and Cecilia Uttrup-Ludwig on 1 point. But today we've got our first categorised 1 Queen of the Mountains. The riders are making their way through the feed zone. Number of drop bottles and how hard it is to go through these feed zones, particularly at such speeds. And you can see the rider there in the yellow jersey of Team Visma, Lisa Bite, just struggling to take a bottle there, Hayley.
Yeah, quite often, if there's the opportunity to do so, the race organisation might put a feed zone on a slight incline, for example, you know, where it gives the riders an opportunity where they'll naturally be going a little bit slower, and it makes it a bit easier to take that bottle. You know, on a stage like today, there might not be that opportunity because you can't put a feed zone, for example, on a classified climb, or certainly a shorter classified climb, and it's probably not a good idea to do so. So it does make it a bit more tricky to find a good point to feed where it minimises the chances of a drop bottle.
And I guess this year the rules are reverted back to what they were from pre-2020, where you have dedicated feed zones, whereas in the last few years you've been able to feed pretty much wherever you wanted, because during the pandemic you could feed, we didn't have the dedicated feed zones anymore, whereas that has changed. We've got the specific feed zones, but you can't just feed where you want anymore. Riders do have the opportunity, that being said, to go back to a team car in the convoy. Every single team has a team car here where you can go back to the team car at any point, any given point, and you can feed until, I believe today is 20 kilometres to go, and you can take a bottle that way as well.
Yeah, sometimes if the temperatures are really hot, they extend those feed zones, obviously, to give riders the opportunity to keep taking on fluids in warmer conditions. Having these designated feed zones makes it a lot safer, I think, for the riders, for the teams, because all of the riders will be expecting to receive bottles or to have the riders around them receive bottles at certain points of the race, whereas if you're kind of on a random point of road and riders start moving around, trying to get to the right-hand side of the road, for example, to take a bottle, then it makes it a bit more unpredictable. It can make it a bit more dangerous. So it is good having these designated feed zones. And the other thing that we do see in these races, which is nice to mention for people who aren't aware and who don't watch racing that commonly, is you've actually got designated litter zones as well. So riders aren't allowed to just discard their gel wrappers, their bar wrappers, anywhere that they want. There are these what we call green zones, where riders can empty their pockets, get rid of any you know, used wrappers that they've got in their pockets. They can discard them in these green zones, and then someone will go to the green zones afterwards and pick them up, which obviously keeps the area cleaner, nicer. It's you know, it minimises the impact that the races are having, which is ultimately what we want. We don't want these races to kind of have a negative impact on any of the local areas. So having these green zones is really important, and there'll be a couple of them throughout the stage, depending on the length of the stage. So we're actually we're briefly returning to North Yorkshire, and the race is going to pass through Stokesley and Great Ayton again. And Great Ayton we've mentioned a couple of times as being the location where Harry and Charlie Tanfield come from, two well-known male riders on the British scene. The race did pass through the area yesterday. We're in a very similar area to yesterday, and the riders will be familiar with how the roads are around here, which should give them a bit more kind of an advantage leading into the finale of today's stage. And you can see those stem notes just on that bike there. So riders will often make notes on the stage just so that they know the kind of key points of the race. Quite often the notes will be, where is the sprint, where is the climb, where does the climb start, where does the climb finish. However, you might also have danger points, so to speak. So in the race manual, it will point out if there's a railway crossing or if there's a dangerous turn. So riders might choose to make a note of that. They might also have the feed zones marked. Or yesterday we mentioned that one of the key points was after the top of that second categorised climb, the road changed direction, and that meant that there was going to be a wind direction change, and riders might actually make a note of that too.
Caution, road narrowed and speed bumps for the peloton. Race location for the peloton is Hilton.
.234 for our leaders, inside 60 kilometres to go. It's really interesting when you talk about those stem notes, Hayley. Do you think the wind will have any impact on today?
It's not as exposed today as it was yesterday. There is always the opportunity for wind once it's at a certain level to kind of play a role if certain teams choose to take advantage of that. I think we've got a westerly wind today. It will actually mean that the finish is actually into a headwind. They are going up Saltburn Bank, but after the steep part of the climb does then continue to work it to kind of continue at a slightly lower gradient, and the fact that they're riding into a headwind means that any riders that want to be in contention for that finish might have to judge their efforts a little bit more based on the fact that they'll be going into a headwind rather than having the assistance of a tailwind.
We've seen over the last 5-6 years the change in the way that riders are fueling themselves throughout a race, throughout a stage race in particular. You see all of the information and details from the head unit of Tiffany Keep there. Speed, you've got the distance. Probably will have a power output as well, potentially.
Yeah, different riders choose to have different things displayed to them on their cycling computer depending on what information they like to have. We often see in stages where there might be a long climb, for example, riders will actually start a new lap on their head unit at the bottom of a climb because they know the effort that they want to put out for that climb. So they might start a new lap and then be kind of aiming for a specific power output. Particularly domestiques, I think, actually. They'll have a plan for, I'm going to set pace on this climb at this power for my team leader. And so it's becoming more and more common to see riders, resetting their head unit for those longer climbs.
Is there a strategy in terms of nutrition throughout a race, and particularly a stage race? Because we've been seeing riders constantly take on gels, taking nibbles of a bar, constantly drinking, sipping on the fluids.
So riders will have their own personal nutrition plans, possibly that they've worked out with team nutritionists if they're part of one of the bigger teams that have a dedicated nutritionist. A general guide is that riders will be aiming to take on something every 20 minutes. there's a lot of talk at the moment about how many grams of carbohydrate per hour you should be aiming for, or your body can process. Personally, I think a lot of them will be looking to aim at around 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour throughout the whole stage. It can be quite difficult to almost keep remembering to eat and drink, particularly if it's a hectic stage where there's a lot going on, a lot to pay attention to. Time can pass and you maybe don't notice that it's been 40 minutes and you maybe haven't taken anything. So there are a couple of tricks that riders employ. So you can actually set alerts on your head unit. So you can set an alert to go off roughly every 20 minutes that flashes up eat and drink, and that can be a nice cue. So even if you can't take anything at that particular moment when the alert comes up, it can just remind you, hey, it's about time to eat and drink. So at the next opportunity, take a sip of drink, try and take a gel. And also DSs in the cars are actually really helpful to come on the radio and say, hey guys, the pace has settled down a bit. Take the opportunity of the more relaxed race scenario to take on some food.
And you can take those carbohydrates on through fluids, through gels, through solid food. The sports directors can be integral. It seems pretty benign. It seems pretty obvious that you know you need to eat and drink, but when you're in a racing situation scenario, sometimes there's so many other things going on.
There are so many things to think about, so many different things that you're trying to concentrate on, that I think it's more not realizing how much time has passed since you perhaps last had something. And as you just mentioned, you can take on those carbohydrates in a lot of different forms. And I think what you tend to see is at moments where the race is maybe a bit calmer, a bit more relaxed, riders will then choose to take on their nutrition through maybe something solid. Whereas when it's going absolutely full gas, it will then be carbohydrate bottles or a gel or something that's really easy to get down quickly, that you don't have to worry about chewing or potentially choke on if you're trying to breathe hard and eat at the same time. So riders will really tailor their nutrition, but in a stage race, and especially if it's a long stage race, you really want to be making sure that you're also having some more solid food, because it can be quite difficult to stomach just energy drink and energy gels for 4, 5, 6 days of, potentially up to 3 or 4 hours per day. So you want to be trying to take an opportunity to have solid food. And then, of course, the riders will finish the stage, and it's really, really important to then make sure you're getting nutrition on board as soon as possible after the stage as well, because you're prioritizing your recovery ready for that next day. So it really is a process of, from maybe 48 hours before the race starts through to the end of the final stage, just really making sure that your nutrition is as optimized as it can be.
And you've got to train your body to be able to take on such a high intake of carbohydrates. You can't just come into a race and expect to be able to take on 90 grams or even in some cases upwards of 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour, which if you take a look at solid food or a plate of food, and I remember last year speaking to Koen de Koor, the former pro rider in the men's side of the pro ranks, and he was working out how much that would equate to, and it was plates and plates and plates of food.
Yeah, it often it
per
is,
hour.
Yeah. Often it is easier to have it as a bottle, for example, because you can get these carbohydrate only mixes, and you can have 90 grams in one bottle. It's actually sometimes nicer when it is a little bit cooler like it is today. It's easier to take on such strong carbohydrate bottles, because sometimes when it's really hot, those bottles end up feeling a little bit sticky, a little bit sickly. So actually the cooler temperatures make it a bit easier to take on the nutrition through the bottles. But that is kind of the easier way to do it, to get that high carbohydrate intake. Some riders seem to be very lucky that they can easily stomach the high carbohydrate loads, but other riders really struggle. So it really is a case of training your body to do it. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is riders really need to test out their nutrition strategies in training. You never want to be, it's true with equipment, it's true with nutrition. You don't want to be trying something for the first time on race day. Riders will always do it and often come unstuck and, you know, at the end of the day say, oh, I should have known better. But it's really important to test your fueling, test your nutrition, and test the exact products as well during training before you do it on an important race day.
Take a look at the crowds that have come out in Stokesley. The historic market town has delivered. Absolutely terrific to see so many people come to cheer the race. Just on the River Leven, just outside the northwestern boundary of the national park. Stokesley has many historic features, including a 17th century packhorse bridge over the River Leven. Got the farmers market the first Saturday of every month, renowned while the annual Stokesley show, which started back in 1859. It's one of the North's largest one-day agricultural shows. You're enjoying the racing come by. If you're just joining us, welcome along. 53.3 kilometres to go on stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. We've got 3 riders who are in the breakaway, including the South African rider Tiffany Keep, the 2 British riders Lucy Gadd and Maddie Leach. They've got an advantage of 3 minutes and 2 seconds. It just changes to 3 minutes as I say. We've got several teams who are controlling this advantage at the head of the peloton, including the riders and teams in the pink jerseys, EF Education, Oatly. We've also got Team SD Works Pro Time, the first opportunity we get to see of that squad up towards the front. Of course, they've got Lorena Wiebes, the European champion, in their ranks. Eleanor Backstead has been doing an awful lot of work for UAE Team ADQ, along with the Irish rider Lara Gillespie. There's Melissa Bike. We've had a couple of riders up towards the front, around 6 teams in total. And of course, AG Insurance Soudal, they've got the leader of the general classification in their ranks. That's Kim LaCourte, yesterday's stage winner. She's got a 5-second advantage in the general classification over the Olympic road race champion, Kristen Faulkner.
I wonder if Lorena Wiebes fancies her chances on Saltburn Bank today, because it is a climb that suits someone like her, who's a very, very powerful sprinter. We've seen her do really well in Ride London before on the Malden stage, which finishes at Malden High Street and is a short, steep climb. So actually, Lorena Wiebes might look at Saltburn Bank and think that actually she stands quite a good chance on that finish today.
The beauty of today's stage, they've got a sighting lap almost. So you come in, I say a sighting lap, it's still going to be very, very difficult, but you get an opportunity to see that final climb.
Which is either great or horrible.
Well, take your pick. Because they'll enter into the final lap with 34.8 kilometres to go. You've got that anti-clockwise loop, but you're going to take on the intermediate sprint, the second intermediate sprint up Saltburn Bank with 18.7 kilometres to go. So you get an opportunity to see that climb before you're going to do it for real in a final. So even if you don't want to go for the intermediate sprint, you get an opportunity to see the climb. And given the fact that we finished yesterday so closely to Saltburn by the Sea, I wouldn't be surprised if some teams maybe took the opportunity just to go and see the final.
I think anyone,
even if you to drive it and not be on the bike.
I think anyone with a vested interest either in the stage or the race overall will have had a look at that, because you really can lose the race by messing that up, because big gaps could potentially open. I know it's only a short climb, but we alluded yesterday to the fact that the race has been won and lost by really tight margins in the past. 1 second, I think we said, was the smallest margin. So you with that in mind, you really could lose the race just by messing up the finish today. So I think it's really important for teams to have looked at that. And the fact that they get that sighting lap, as you just mentioned, it doesn't just give the riders as an individual the opportunity to work out maybe what gear they want or what speed they can go into the corner at the bottom, things like that. It gives the team an opportunity to maybe test out a lead out. Where do they want to release their sprinter or release their team leader? How do they want to play it? And they can test that out in that lap, and then they can almost have a chat amongst themselves. We do see riders grouping together as team units and having conversations, so maybe they can test something out in that kind of the first time up Saltburn Bank, and then they can have a chat and say, well, did that work? Do we want to go a bit later because of what the wind situation is? Do we want to use this rider slightly differently? And it does give them the opportunity to do that, and maybe have a chat to the directors in the car as well.
Given the fact that the largest winning margin was 1 minute and 18 seconds, that was back in 2017 by Kasia Nuviadoma, who won stage 1 of the race with a terrific solo attack. But the smallest winning margin, a second, the largest 1 minute 18. The bonus seconds are crucial. Don't forget, we've got bonus seconds at our intermediate sprints. We've got 2 intermediate sprints today, both of those coming with 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds for the first 3 riders. Also points gained in the red jersey classification, 10, 7, 5, 3 and 1 points at Guisborough and at the first passage of the finish line in Saltburn by the Sea. We've also got our bonus seconds that come at the finish line, 10, 6 and 4 bonus seconds on the finish line, and of course more points available, 25 for the winner. We head back into Great Ayton. Yesterday we passed through this village, the hometown of Charlie and Harry Tanfield. Nice road surface. It's great that we're able to use some of the roads that the race visited yesterday, so there's a little bit of familiarity for the riders in the peloton today.
Yeah, it's always nice feeling as though you know what's coming and that you have a bit of an idea of where you are and what's ahead. It's quite reassuring, or if there is a technicality and you've seen it before and you know how to handle it, then it makes you feel a little bit more reassured, a little bit safer. Talking about the bonus seconds, the GC teams will quite like the fact that at the moment these 3 riders are up ahead, because it means that they don't need to worry about who might be trying to take the bonus seconds at the intermediate sprints. They'll be quite happy with this breakaway staying away at least past that first sprint point, because they will take the bonus seconds. They're not a risk in the general classification at the moment, and it's one less thing for the general classification teams to worry about, and it means that they don't need to expend energy trying to make sure that they stop rivals taking the bonus seconds.
The leading trio, the highest place rider in the general classification is Tiffany Keep and actually Maddie Leach, both sitting at 6 minutes and 35 seconds behind our current leader Kim LaCourt in that green Lloyds jersey. Lucy Gadd is at 9 minutes and 43, so as you say, Hayley, no one is a big threat in the general classification. They're certainly not worried. And when you talk about general classification teams, which teams are going to be going for the general classification? Which kind, and who are we thinking about for the general classification? Who's got big ambitions to try and win this tour?
Yeah, so obviously our current leader, Kim LaCourt, is from AG Insurance Soudal team, and she spoke actually before the race started about how, as a team, they could hopefully go for not just stages, which obviously she managed to take stage 1 yesterday, but also the race overall. So I think as a team, they clearly have their sights set on winning the overall general classification of this race. We've then got EF Education Oatly with Kristen Faulkner currently sitting in second. They are also definitely the team that we're thinking about as being a general classification team. With there being bonus seconds and the fact that yesterday there were small gaps between those 2 breakaway riders and then the chase group, and Lorena Wiebes was in the chase group, we would look at the Glasgow stage on Sunday as suiting Lorena Wiebes, maybe today as well. We're also then obviously talking about Team SD Works Pro Time as potentially being a general classification team, but the advantage that they have at the moment is that they aren't leading the race, so they actually can kind of sit back a little bit and say, hey, it's not on us to control the gap to the breakaway, because we're not currently holding the leader's jersey. We're not in that position yet.
So the onus is very much on a team that's leading the jersey to control the breakaway, the unwritten rule.
Yeah, pretty much. And we're seeing EF Education Oatly being very present at the front, so clearly they're also taking some of the responsibility, obviously with Kristen Faulkner being in that very strong position, only having a deficit of a couple of seconds. We're seeing them making sure they're present at the front and kind of controlling the situation a little bit. So we are seeing them just there on the left-hand side, and we can't see them at the moment, but we have seen 2 or 3 of the riders from AG Insurance Sudal team also present at the front.
To run through the top 10 in the general classification, so you've got an idea of how close it is. Kim LaCourt leads 5 seconds ahead of Kristen Faulkner. Lorena Weaver's at 14 seconds. Caroline Swinkle's at 17 seconds. Then a handful of riders all on 18 seconds, including Linda Zanatti in 5th. British rider Kat Ferguson and Millie Cousins. Megan Jastrab, Ali Wollaston, Quinty Ton, Sarah Van Dam, Anna Henderson, Rihanna Marcus, Zoe Backstead, Dominika Wlodaszek. Also Cecilia Uchub-Ludwig, Floortje Mackay, Aude Pianic, all at 18 seconds. And then a number of riders at 24 seconds, including Loretta Hansen, Lizzie Deigner, former 2-time winner of the overall of this race, Marie Linette and Amber Crack, all at 24. The next rider is Mara Roldan at 1:40, and then a whole host of riders at 2 minutes and 6 seconds, led by Nienke Veenhoven, the Dutch rider from Visma Leasebike.
That climb yesterday really was incredibly decisive, and I think it has shaped the way the rest of this race is going to be. There'll be the opportunity for riders who are kind of further down the classifications to maybe take a stage win, but you know, there's a relatively small proportion of riders, I would say, left to compete for that general classification victory, just because of the damage that was done and the gaps that opened following that climb.
So if you take a look down at, let's say, the top 20, given the fact that Loretta Hansen is a super domestique for Lidl, Trek, Lizzie Deignan is one to try and help their team win the overall. Marie Linette the same, as well as Amber Crack. Who are we looking at to try and go for that general classification and to try and win the green jersey?
I think Lorena Wiebes is going to be looking at it, because she can pick up bonus seconds at the sprint finishes. There are quite a few bonus seconds available, and the race has been won and lost on those bonus seconds before. So actually, if she can take stage victory today, possibly in Glasgow, she can kind of catapult herself into the lead just by virtue of taking the bonus seconds. So, you know, she's certainly one to watch for. Kim LaCourt yesterday showed just how strong she was, and Kristen Faulkner was the only one that could go with her. So those two I would almost certainly be watching as well. But I think realistically, you've only got maybe 22 riders seriously in contention for the general classification if things go as expected. Of course, there is always the situation, which we've seen in races before, where an individual rider takes an opportunity, manages to go up the road in a breakaway today, possibly tomorrow, and the peloton miscalculate and they let a rider get too much time, and don't bring that rider back. And that's the only kind of situation that I can foresee that could shake things up and mean that a rider who's currently at a deficit of 2 minutes could then take the overall win.
We saw the arrival of Raquel Barbieri from Picnic Postanel. Of course, Megan Jastrab is well placed in that general classification, 8th overall at 18 seconds. A real brilliant performance from the rider from the USA, racing for that Dutch squad. Marta Lack is doing a lot of work for SD Works Pro Time to look after Lorena Wiebes likewise. Melissa Bike have arrived at the front as well with a full roster of riders. They've got Martina Fidanza, Linda Riedman, Margot Vigie, Nienke Veenhoven and Imogen Wolf, all a part of their roster. Kat Ferguson, she's got a great squad around her to protect her. Aude Bianic, Floortje Mackay, and Laura and Lucia Ruiz Perez. She thinks she can go for the general classification, and I wouldn't put it past Kat Ferguson, the 19-year-old sensation, that she can do something, particularly given the parkour that we see here.
Yeah.
Because it's not your traditional kind of tour where you've got the big mountains, you've got the long alpine climbs. These are climbs that suit Kat Ferguson very well.
Yeah, she excels on this kind of terrain, and I think she does have a bit of an advantage being from the UK. We've mentioned it before, Lizzie Deignan always comes back to it whenever she races in the UK. There's just something a little bit different about some of the British roads, about some of the intricacies, the way they roll. They're quite slow, they're hard wearing. It's attritional racing, and the weather can be unpredictable, as we've seen. And I think all of those things that mean that Kat has a bit of an advantage.
We're onto the roads that we were on yesterday. The organisation, you can see that they've barriered it to make it one side of the road that the peloton and the riders can take, as opposed to yesterday. We saw Kristen Faulkner get the corner wrong. She managed to keep it upright, and she was back underway with Kim LaCourt. But I have to say, chapeau to the race organisation and the route director, and of course those all involved, making a very swift but effective change there on that right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's great to see that that's happened. The other thing that that we have in these races as a women's peloton is a couple of riders per race are kind of designated, not safety officials, but representatives of the women's peloton. So there'll be 2 or 3 riders, and everyone in the race will know who they are, and it's kind of their job in the race to take any feedback from the peloton, any safety considerations, anything that they thought were a bit dangerous, didn't have enough attention drawn to them, and they will go to the race organisation at the end of each stage or the beginning of the next stage and say, hey, just for your information, as a women's peloton, we thought that this particular thing wasn't quite as safe as we would have liked. We would potentially like something done about it. Or, for example, in a race situation, if motorbikes aren't moving through in a way that the riders consider safe enough.
Race location for our leaders is Guisborough.
So basically having those representatives there gives an opportunity for riders to make safety feedback, and then the organisation can act on it, and that's just a really nice way of making sure that the riders feel safe, and that the race organisation also know how the riders are feeling, and they can make any changes or improvements that just make the racing better for everyone.
Well, a big chapeau to the race organisation and all those involved in a swift change on that right-hand corner. We're into Guisborough, our first of 2 intermediate sprints into the market town in Redcar and Cleveland. Market day was yesterday. Today's stage is of course, yesterday we had a slightly different route, but the peloton come into that right-hand corner now, led by the squad of Movistar in those white jerseys with the navy blue band around the chest. Don't forget the intermediate sprints, they come with points towards the red points classification and bonus seconds to go with it. Guisborough is a Roman artifact. The Guisborough helmet is a Roman artifact found nearby through the sprint.
So these 3 riders have less than a kilometre to go now to this first intermediate sprint. The peloton will be quite happy that the points are going to be taken by these 3 riders. I'd imagine that the 3 of them will probably battle it out amongst themselves for the honours at this sprint point.
It's not just the honours, and it's not just the points, but prize money at the intermediate sprints too. You want to try and get yourself on a leaderboard and to try and add some points to the tally. 10 points in total are on offer for the first rider to cross through.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, if this breakaway does manage to stay away until they get to Saltburn, then there are more points, more prize money, and things like that on offer there as well. So they'll stand themselves in good stead in that competition if they can successfully outsprint their breakaway companions to the line.
Maddie Leach just getting herself ready. She's the rider with the blue overshoes, sandwiched between Lucy Ganna and Tiffany Keep. See up ahead where the barriers start. You can see the red sign signaled for that intermediate sprint. Tiffany Keeper's got interest to try and take the points, to try and take the bonus seconds. Lucy Gann reacts in the red jersey, but Tiffany Keeper's stolen a margin. She's going to easily take this intermediate sprint in Guisborough. She takes the 3 bonus seconds. She takes the 10 points. Job well done there from the rider from Das Hutchinson. That was certainly a pre-planned attack to try and go for that intermediate sprint in Guisborough.
Yeah, she positioned herself nicely at the back so that you know, she wasn't necessarily viewed when she chose to accelerate. So yeah, she obviously planned to go for that. I wondered if Maddie would choose to try and contest it, but she looked quite happy to just kind of, or maybe, to be honest, maybe she's exhausted. She did, of course, have that work to do to make her way back to her breakaway companions after the bike change, so potentially she just spent a little bit too much energy and didn't really have anything left to go for that sprint there. And the acceleration that Tiffany Keep put in to take that sprint has actually it's had the effect of splintering this breakaway, and that could mean the end of the breakaway, because as soon as they're not working together quite as well, it gives the peloton much more of an opportunity to come back.
The rider's been averaging just below 40 kilometers per hour, so they've not been hanging around. The fact that the weather conditions were pretty miserable at the start, but you've had a stage which has been undulating, and now we're soon going to be entering into our lap. In the next 200 meters or so, sorry, in 4 kilometers or so, is when we'll get to our lap. It's 34.8 kilometers when we'll enter into that lap. The gap for the first time in a long while is below that 2-minute marker, and you can see how ferocious the chase is behind, because they know that it's going to be crucial soon.
Update from the front of the race. Rider 164 is in difficulty after the sprint.
I think Maddie Leach is now in that gap between those 2 riders at the front and this chasing peloton, and so I think she'll be reeled in quite quickly. But we can see that the advantage, not that long ago, we saw it just over 3 minutes, and now it's back below 2. So I think the teams at the front are aware that we're now getting into the business end of the stage, so to speak, and this is the time where they'll be looking to bring down that gap, and as soon as the breakaway riders are caught, I think we're going to see some more attacks going from the front of the race, particularly if the breakaway is caught as we get to one of the classified climbs or Saltburn Bank.
It just shows as well, once those teams start to ignite and they really turn the tap, how quickly they can bring back a breakaway, and particularly when you see how fatigued some of the riders are looking, and given the fact that they've been out for such a long while in this breakaway. Maddie Leach, you can see from the body language, the head starting to drop, and she knows that it's going to be a tough ask. We're entering onto a really demanding loop very soon, and that gap 1:47 now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, she had everyone had a hard day of racing yesterday as well. These breakaway riders have been out for, you know, nearly 80 kilometers, quite a long time, and the fatigue will be setting in. The roads are hard to ride, whereas some of these riders in this peloton will be relatively fresh because they will have been able to sit in the wheels for most of the day so far. They will have been sucked along, and so now those kind of fresher riders can come to the front and start doing work for their teams to bring that gap down. And you know, you've got some of these teams will have 3, 4, even 5 domestiques for their team leader, and so if all of those riders are now coming to the front and expending their energy from a much fresher state, they can make inroads very quickly.
Liverloo Lejako arrive at the front with a couple of their riders. Thinking about today's stage and looking at their roster of riders: Amber Pate, Georgia Baker, Josie Talbot. We've also got the Italian Letizia Paternoster, Ruby Rose Mangannon, who won the final stage last year into Lee, and they've also got Quinty Ton, who's 10th overall in the general classification at 18 seconds behind Kim LaCourte. They've got some good options, Liverloo Jaco, particularly with Letizia Paternoster.
Yeah, she's got a good history in this race and racing in the UK, so she's definitely a rider that I would watch. Obviously, Ruby Roseman Gannon took a stage last year. I would maybe think that she might be looking more towards the Glasgow stage, but of course, I think all the riders are so aware that Lorena Wiebes is in this race and that she will really be the one to watch on Sunday.
Through another feed zone, the team's able to hand out bottles, hand out gels for the riders. Little shake of the head from Tiffany Keep. She's all right for the moment.
Yeah, you can see here that the soigneurs, the helpers from the teams, are on that slight incline. It makes it so much easier for the riders to take a bottle just because they're naturally going a bit more slowly. It can be so difficult trying to take a bottle at speed, especially from within the bunch when you're so closely grouped, the speeds are so high, and then you're trying to grab a bottle from a stationary helper at the side of the road.
Amanda Leach taking the opportunity just to spin the legs, take a bottle before she'll be swept up by the peloton that is charging behind. And when you see the speeds that they're travelling at, and it's ferocious. They know that this loop is crucial. They know that once they head into that first Queen of the Mountain, they'll get to the base of the Queen of the Mountain with 33.6 kilometres to go. So very shortly after they enter into the lap, they know it's crucial. It's only a 1.9 kilometre climb. And here, FDJ Suez have unleashed Jade Veal, the former French champion. Marta Lack is following, the rider from SD Works Pro Time. She's the rider in the purple jersey. And one rider from EF Education Oatly in the pink jersey is hauling away to get onto the wheel of the Polish rider. Through the feed zone. No time to take a feed. Jade Veal just dancing on the pedals.
It's interesting to see how the riders have taken the opportunity of clearly an uphill stretch, but that we hadn't necessarily pointed out at the start of the stage. It's, you know, a slightly innocuous uphill stretch, actually. It's not the classified climb, it's not Saltburn Bank, but the nature of this circuit is that there's so many, you know, features that riders can use to their advantage.
You and I spoke about it yesterday on the coverage.
Yeah.
The fact that you've got these climbs that are unclassified, but they can still be a key moment, a key part of the race. They might not be a Queen of the Mountain point, but you've got to be wary of them.
Absolutely, and this is where the more experienced riders and also, you know, the really good DSs will have gone over some of these race profiles with literally a fine-tooth comb, because I've been in plenty of races where there's been I've marked all of the Queen of the Mountains points, all of the major climbs, and then actually the place at which the race is completely split, and actually some of the bits that have felt most difficult are things that aren't a designated feature, so to speak. So it's so important to use resources like VeloViewer, where you can see all the gradients, you can see where the climbs are, and you make a note of all of those points, because riders are expecting attacks at a Queen of the Mountains. Everyone's expecting someone to attack there. So actually, you want to try and find a point in the race where you're not expected to attack, and that's where you can really make a difference and potentially make a breakaway, get up the road and put yourself in a stage-winning situation.
35.6 kilometres to go. We've clicked over 2 hours of racing on stage 2 here at the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. We've had 3 riders who have made it into the breakaway, including Lucy Gadd of Smurfit West Rock Cycling Team. She's the rider in the red jersey with the black shorts. Also in the breakaway is Tiffany Keep, the South African rider from Das Hutchinson, in the blue and the green jersey of the British Continental team. Maddie Leach was formerly a part of the breakaway. She's the rider who's about to be called by the peloton, racing for Hansling Alba Development Road Team. They gained over 3 minutes of an advantage. It's all been well controlled and patrolled by EF Education Oatly in the pink. They've also been UAE Team ADQ, amongst other teams, including the team of the general classification leader, AG Insurance Soudal. It's Kim LeCourt who's in the green leader's jersey. Stage 2, starting from Hartlepool, we're heading for Saltburn by the Sea. We're heading into the finishing lap and she's about to be swallowed up. There she is. She's caught by the peloton. Maddie Leach is back into the peloton. Top job by the British rider. Great to have her in the breakaway, but on such a difficult, demanding day, there's no surprise that we're starting to see some fatigue. Well, if you're just joining us, get yourself set, because this is going to be a thrilling finale. Alongside me, Hannah Walker, is Hayley Simmons. We're about to go into our final loop, Hayley. For some riders, they'll know this loop well. It's been several, and a lot of the road has been a part of the British National Championships, and this will be what is the final 15 kilometres of the race. And so you almost get an opportunity to see the final 15 kilometres. Where do you need to be? What's the wind doing? What's the weather doing? What are the roads like? What's the climb like?
Yeah, it gives everyone an opportunity to sight the kind of key points for that finishing loop. The British riders will have had the opportunity to have ridden this previously at National Championships and also East Cleveland Classic, one of our National Series races. So these roads will be familiar to them. I'm not sure whether all of them all of the riders will actually have that as a positive, because they know how hard this circuit is, how hard the roads are, how much undulation there is. There's not just the classified climb and Saltburn Bank. There's these other little sections of road that, like we can see the riders tackling here, that are going uphill. That's not kind of part of a classified climb itself, and it really is hard going, this circuit.
Well, we've just gone through the base of the Queen of the Mountain. The peloton are there. Josie Talbot moves forward down the centre of the road in the purple jersey for Liv Alula-Jaco. She's got Georgia Baker on the wheel. So there is a couple of the riders from the Great Britain national team, including Flora Perkins. She's one of the riders in the white jersey in the national team kit.
They'll be protecting the interests of Millie Cousins, who's their highest placed rider at the moment. She had a great ride yesterday, and so now the other riders on that Great Britain team will be trying to keep her in the best position possible so that she can make sure that she's up there when any of the moves go.
Some of the key points in the race, and particularly that descent that led into the bottom of the Queen of the Mountain, you can see everybody wanted to be well placed because it was such a fast run-in to the Queen of the Mountain, because you had the fast roads, the rolling roads, and now there's a slight change in the way that the peloton looks.
Yeah, we saw it yesterday with that second Queen of the Mountains, which ended up being the decisive point of the stage. There was a really fast descent right into the bottom of that climb, and the peloton just became one long line, and so it was crucial to be at the front, because otherwise you had to make up a deficit before you even then expended the energy to kind of be trying to keep on terms with the leaders up that climb. And we're going to see that several times today. We're seeing it now into this climb, and you're also going to see it into Saltburn Bank, because there's a really fast flowing descent before the left-hand corner that takes you along the seafront, and then at the other left-hand corner onto Saltburn Bank itself. So actually these fast flowing descents could be decisive, and it's going to be crucial to be in the right position at the front leading into them.
Until now, it's been a nice, steady Queen of the Mountain, but with 500 metres to go, look at how this Queen of the Mountain just rears up in front of you. You've got gradients in this top part of the climb of 11, 12, 13%. And Tiffany Keep, well, she's keeping a very nice cadence. She's got a very nice style on the bike. She looks fluid. And meanwhile, Lucy Gadd is starting to struggle at the back here, and she's seen the South African right away on Marske Lane, this categorised 1 Queen of the Mountain, and the first categorised 1 climb that we've seen in this year's Lloyds Tour of Britain.
This is a tough climb as well. It's 1.9 kilometres on paper, but it always feels as though it goes on a lot longer. And there are a couple of corners in it, which means that you can have kind of out of sight, out of mind a little bit. So actually, once these gaps start opening up, so between those two riders at the front of the race, you can lose sight of the rider in front of you quite quickly, and then it becomes easier to become a little bit demoralised about the situation. But yeah, having ridden this climb quite a few times in the National Road Race, it is difficult.
10 points will be on offer in that Queen of the Mountains competition, given the fact it's a categorised 1 Queen of the Mountain. And you can see now that Anuska Costa in that blue jersey arrives at the front of the peloton. She's currently joint on points with Kim LaCourt, 6 points each between her and Kim LaCourt. She's got the blue jersey. She wants to try and be the outright leader of that Queen of the Mountains competition by the end of today. She's certainly got the attributes and the capabilities to do so. She's kept herself pretty quiet over the last 35 kilometres or so, but it's a relentless climb here.
It is, and she knows that even if she doesn't necessarily catch these 2 breakaway riders by the top of the climb on this lap, she can still take more points than Kim LaCourt on this climb, and then they will also tackle this climb a second time not that long from now.
Over the top of Marks Lane, the categorised 1 Queen of the Mountain, it's Tiffany Keep, the South African from Dus Hutchinson, who takes maximum points, 10 points into her account. Sprinting for it, it's Anuska Costa. Wow, she pips Lucy Gadd on the line. She takes 9 points there. That was incredible. And soon the breakaway is about to be swallowed up and it'll all come back together, but that was an incredible effort there from Anuska Costa, the former Dutch champion from Uno X Mobility.
Yeah, when you were just talking about her attributes a second ago, I was about to say that she's actually got a very good explosiveness at the top of some of these steep climbs, and she just proved that, because I thought she was going to cross the line in 3rd. She ended up just about coming 2nd as well, so she actually took you know, more points. She took 9 points on that climb, which puts her in good stead to be the outright owner of that jersey tomorrow. I think Tiffany Keep is just going to keep pushing on as long as possible. I think she knows that her day is coming to an end very soon, and she'll just measure her effort a little bit, allow these riders to catch her, and then do her utmost to try and stay with them. And actually you can see the damage that that climb has done, because there are a group of riders at the head of this race, but then the tail of the peloton, as we call it, extends for quite a way along the road.
And this is a perfect opportunity to do so and see what it looks like from the aerial shot from the helicopter, where riders have been tailed off the back. There are gaps starting to open up. The one thing that I notice is a lot of the riders, they don't have the numerical advantage that they did before the climb. So teams and riders are a little bit depleted because, of course, that climb was so arduous. Tiffany Keep has got only a handful of seconds now with 30.2 kilometres to go.
That is definitely an example of a climb that feels a lot more difficult to ride than it perhaps looks on paper, and the riders know that they're going to be tackling that again. But actually it gives some of these teams a bit of a sighting lap, as you mentioned before, so they know that actually it could be a springboard for an attack, so they might not need to wait until Saltburn.
Big attack here from Liv Alula-Jayco, Amber Pate in the purple jersey. Well, Tiffany Keep has been swallowed up by the peloton. Top job from the South African from Das Hutchinson. But now we've got a new race situation, a new scenario that's starting to unfold as we're on to our final lap, this anti-clockwise loop that they'll pass through the finish line for the very first time, up Saltburn Bank and through the finish line with 18.7 kilometres to go. But there's lots of riders who are coming towards the front, and you can start to get the sense, Hayley, that teams and riders want to try and do something. They want to try and make this hard, because there's still some incredibly fast riders who have managed to hold on up Marks Lane here.
Exactly. You need to be thinking about, how do I get rid of the Lorena Wiebes, for example, and realistically the best option for a lot of these teams is to ride the category 1 climb hard, but then keep it hard, because if the climb is hard and then the race sits up, it gives riders behind an opportunity to get back on. Whereas by keeping the pace high, as soon as the road moves upwards again, any gaps that have opened will stay open, which of course riders that were in that tail of the peloton that we just spoke about, those riders will be praying that the pace is going to ease at the top of the climb, and so they will almost watch somebody attack off the front and be quite not very happy at what's going on, just praying that somebody sits it up again.
Well, the Olympic road race champion just sensed the danger as to what was going on at the front, because Little Track have got Lizzie Deignan, a former winner of this race on 2 occasions, and the only former winner of the overall classification in the race at the front. And for Lidl Trek, they know that they can try and apply the pressure and they can keep this tempo really high. And then you just saw Kristen Faulkner just come around the outside of the peloton, slot herself in within the top 10. And there's a number of riders that are being tailed off once again here, just due to the impetus from Lidl Trek. Yeah,
you can really tell kind of how the race is going based on the shape of the peloton. So while the breakaway was established and those riders were up the road, you saw a flat-fronted peloton. Everyone was fairly relaxed and the entire road was filled from curb to curb with riders. Now the race is really on, the pace is high, and Lidl Trek, having been a team that we talked about maybe not doing very much yesterday in that small group, they're really putting the pressure on today. A huge acceleration once again from Lidl Trek. Looks as though it's Loretta Hansen, one rider from FDJ Suez, is counter-attacking here, and now we're starting to see a lot of impetus at the front of the race. Also there is Pickney Postenel, one rider from AG Insurance Soudal. Looks as though Josie Talbot is there for Liverlula Jaco. It's incredibly active here inside the final 30 kilometres. I think the section of the course that they're about to come to actually is a slightly narrower, more rural area. There are quite a few twists and turns. I believe they're going to go under a bridge as well and around some corners, and that can give some complexity. There we get the results of the Queen of the Mountain on Marks Lane. It was Tiffany Keep who took the maximum points ahead of Anushka Koska. Great to see Dominika Wlodarczyk take some points in that classification, as well as Kristen Faulkner taking 5, Henderson with the 4, Uttrup Ludwig with 3, Wiebes taking 2, Jure taking 1. Well, Lorena Wiebes, she was able to follow some of the big accelerations on that climb, and no doubt she's still there within that peloton, and she does pose a big threat to a lot of teams and her rivals. Exactly. I think the climb of Saltburn Bank, which is short and steep, will suit her quite well. And so if she can hold on that longer climb that's 1.9 kilometres, then she stands a really good chance of taking the stage win today. But you can see, I think the riders are worried about some of the roads that are coming up, the fact that they are a bit narrower, there are some more twists and turns, and they actually want to really keep the pressure on to make it as kind of safe as possible for their team leaders, but also to make sure that riders who've been dropped don't have the opportunity to come back. We're going to have quite a fast section of road through the hedgerows, through these narrow country lanes for the next 2 kilometres or so, and Lidl Trek are getting themselves well organised. Anna Henderson, the next rider to put a big injection of pace in. AG Insurance Soudal are acute to this move. So are Pickney Postenel, following each and every move here. We mentioned yesterday that we were kind of questioning maybe what Lidl Trek were doing in that kind of chase group towards the finish. Maybe why didn't they contribute to the chase? Were they under instructions to maybe let the other teams expend their energy and just hope that the gap remained small enough that their riders were still in contention with the general classification? What we're seeing today is that the riders that they have there are almost taking it in turns to either make the pace high at the front or maybe put in an attack. Good save there from Anna Morris at the back of the peloton. It just shows positioning at the back here, Hayley, and the fact that you're in and out of the trees, you're onto the dry roads. And meanwhile, Anna Henderson, well, there's a number of riders who've come down, including the European champion Lorena Wiebes on the left side. She's also got one of her teammates alongside her from SD Works Pro Time. Anna Morris did come down. Well, it just shows positioning is crucial. I think this is why we saw that injection of pace, why we saw the race being strung out, because especially the British riders will, and anyone who's done their homework on the stage will know that that particular stretch of road does offer a little bit more danger. And the other thing that I noticed there when we just got the shot of the riders who'd come down is a lot of the roads, yes, they have been drying out since it stopped raining. However, the sections of road that are undercover are still damp, and so if riders have almost gotten used to the fact, oh, the roads are dry now, I can take the corners a bit more quickly, when there's then a wet section, they'll be caught off guard, and that's when you can get those incidents occurring and those crashes happening. Megan Jastrab, the rider who is with Anna Henderson,
Both riders sitting comfortably in the general classification. Megan Jastrab 8th overall at 18 seconds. Anna Henderson of Lidl Trek, she's the Olympic silver medalist in the time trial. She's 12th overall at 18 seconds. And this section of road, Henderson will know very, very well from the national championships. And this is a key moment where you've been saying before, it doesn't just matter about the Queen of the Mountains. This can be, whilst it's an unclassified climb, this can be a decisive moment in the race.
This bit's hard. This section, again, the road, it feels like a steeper gradient than it is, and it keeps on going. And they're going to get to the top of this stretch of road and then have a very fast descent, and then go straight into another bit of climbing. And all of these sections of climbing are unclassified, but riders who have raced here before will know how hard they feel and how much of an advantage they can actually make if they push on.
After that crash, take a look at this helicopter shot. We've got two distinct groups as riders are trying to chase their way back on to the front part of the first chase behind Anna Henderson and Megan Jastrab. From this helicopter shot, it looks as though it's Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto are doing the majority of the work right now, because they've clearly got one rider that they need to get back to the front of that race.
Because the time gaps will, of course, be crucial for the overall classification. So it's not just about getting back on terms for a stage win. If riders who were, you know, on the same, you know, on only a small deficit on the race leader at the start of today's stage, if they were caught behind the crash, then they're going to potentially be losing more time. So, you know, their teams, it will be crucial for them to do some of the work to close the gap. But Anna Henderson, she has now been reeled in by this front group, but she will, as you said, she'll know this section of road very, very well. So after they do this very fast descent from that roundabout, they get to another roundabout at the bottom, they'll turn left, and then they're almost immediately on another unclassified uphill stretch. And actually Anna Henderson pretty much blew the National Road Race apart 2 years ago on that exact climb. She attacked not long after the roundabout, and that's what made the decisive split in the National Championships 2 years ago. So, you know, she knows this race really well.
She certainly does. She certainly does, and that has an added benefit, particularly this fast descent that goes to the sea towards Saltburn Bank. It's how fast you can take some of these corners out of the roundabout as well. How much speed can you carry? Because this next section of road, once again, is another difficult, demanding one. It's attritional, it's arduous, and Rihanna Marcus of Lidl Trek in the red, blue and yellow jersey decides to keep the pace high. FDJ Suez are all over the moves of Lidl Trek. But look at that, in the white jersey, sitting in third wheel, that's Kat Ferguson of Movistar.
I'm sure someone will correct me if I am wrong, but I'm pretty sure Kat Ferguson won the Klondike East Cleveland Classic National Series race here last year, in the spring of last year. So she will also know this section of road really, really well. She knows Saltburn Bank really well, and she's put herself in a really good position here in terms of, you know, being able to contest the top positions on today's stage.
This area's been a key feature of many National Series races. As Saley mentioned, 2 times the host of the National Road Race Championships. Having the knowledge of the course is important. Having ridden it yourself and knowing exactly how it feels. I mean, take a look from this motorbike camera shot of how steep the climb is. Several riders starting to be distanced, including Julia Borgstrom, the Swedish rider for AG Insurance Sudal.
Surprisingly, Anuska Costa looked as though she was maybe just struggling to get back on terms at the back of this group, and you know, she will be hopefully looking to take more Queen of the Mountains points on the classified climb when they go through it on the next lap.
Hansling Alba Development Road team are on the front with one of their riders. Seeing still that second group, they haven't quite managed to get themselves back to this front group. Another several riders, what have we got there? 6 riders who are ejected out of the back of the group, including one rider from Visma Lisa Bike in the yellow jersey.
I think for the remainder of this stage, actually what we're potentially more going to be seeing is riders kind of falling off the back of the front group rather than maybe attacking off the front, because it just shows how attritional these roads in this stage are. This stage is.
Emma Norsgaard is at the back of the Group 4 Lidl track. We're also just getting a little shot of Zoe Backstead of Canyon Stram Zonda Crypto at the back of the group.
Kristen Faulkner is still right there up near the front, positioning herself really, really well into the final lap of this race.
Barbara Gurishki is still in the group for SD Works Pro Time. The big question is, where is Lorena Wiebes? And did she manage to get back on yet? And is she still in that second group, chasing after that crash on the descent? Try and get some information as to where Lorena Wiebes, the European champion, is.
I think she had one teammate with her, but it's going to be very, very difficult for just her plus one teammate to kind of make up the ground on a group that is working as hard as this front group is.
Several riders in this group, including Ella McLean-Hound, the white jersey from the Great Britain national team, number 24. That is Alessia Vigiglia, the Italian for FDJ Suez. She's also alongside a teammate, that's Jade Veal.
And the green jersey's in here as well. There's the leader's jersey of Kim LaCourte in this group as well. So at the moment, she's not in the best position.
Gurishki knows that Wiebes is coming across.
Yeah, she just looked behind her.
The way that she just looked behind, she knows that a teammate is coming. And meanwhile, this is favouring into the hands of Lidl Trek. Now Lizzie Deignan, the former world champion, fires herself off the front. She's being chased down by Visma Lisabike and Letizia Paternoster. She's having a great ride so far, isn't she? She's the rider in the purple jersey. She's a real threat, a real danger to this finale of the race.
Liverlula Jaco have been very active in the closing parts of this stage. You know, I think they're very, very, very interested in a stage win in this race, but clearly they have intentions.
It's great to see. They've got several other riders who are in the group, including the Dutch rider Quinty Ton. Discussions going on between FDJ Suez on the left side. That's Ali Wollaston, who is the rider in the navy blue jersey with the red sleeves on the far left side of the screen as you're looking at it. She's an incredibly fast finisher. World champion on the track. She's got Amber Crack, who's with her. She's number 26. Just in front of Amber Crack is number 66. That is Quinty Ton. Just in front of her, Letizia Paternoster. Paternoster following Anna Henderson. Cecilia Ludwig is still in the group for Canyon Stram Zonda Crypto. Lauren Dickinson is the rider for Hansling Alba. You can see on the near side on the blue bike with the multicoloured jersey. She's in incredible form over the last couple of weeks. She's had some tremendous results, particularly in Brittany, at Plumelec and Morbihan.
I think she maybe was a bit caught out yesterday because given her current form and how well she's been racing, she lost a little bit of time yesterday, and maybe she was just caught out of position at the wrong moment. But we saw her come to the front at the top of that climb a second ago, and she looks in great shape. This is this fast corner after that descent, and this is where we're really going to see this group be completely stretched out, because they all want to hit this left-hand corner that we're now seeing the motorbikes take right at the front, because this is the decisive moment where they hit Saltburn Bank.
Onto Saltburn Bank, a 300-metre climb, unclassified, but with an average gradient of 14.7%, and it's Lizzie Deignan who is trying to do the damage on this very climb. She sees the Yorkshire flag wave just in front of her. She's going to take on the next hairpin. She wants to try and do the damage, and look at the way that riders are starting to fragment and capitulate just under the pressure that's being applied at the front by the Yorkshire woman, Lizzie Deignan. Don't forget, we've got our intermediate sprint that will come at the first pass of the finish line with inside 18 kilometres to go.
I have to say, Kristen Faulkner looks comfortable. You see some of the grimaces on some of the faces of the riders, and Kristen Faulkner looks completely under control, and now she's going to the front, and I think she's going to take this opportunity to try and really make a difference for this stage.
Kristen Faulkner is the rider in the blue jersey, the USA National Road Champion, just on a wheel. She's got Kat Ferguson in the white jersey, the best young rider in the race so far. Imogen Wolfe is up towards the front. Great to see the young British rider from Visma, Lisa Bike, is there in the yellow jersey. Caroline Swinkles in the white jersey for UAE Team ADQ. Don't forget, at this intermediate sprint, you've got bonus points. You've got points and you've got bonus seconds, which are crucial. And Anna Henderson is wanting to try and take these bonus seconds. She goes early, she goes long. It's also an opportunity to get a little look at this finish, but of course Henderson knows it well. Is Faulkner going to be able to try and take these seconds from her? Well, Kat Ferguson comes through. That's very close on the line.
I think it was Ferguson Faulkner. I mean, I think everyone as well is aware that at the moment the current race leader, Kim LaCourte, is not in this front group. And so at the moment, everybody has the opportunity, particularly with the bonus seconds on offer, to fight for that leader's jersey. Now, whether Kim LaCourte is suffering a little bit from that crash right at the start of today's stage, whether she was a little bit nervous of the kind of narrower bits of road where we saw that crash, whether she was out of position, we're not sure. We don't know how she ended up being in that second group, but at the moment she isn't here, and so at the moment it looks likely as though we're going to have a new race leader.
And here you can see this is the group of the green jersey, Kim LaCourte, the leader in the general classification. You've got Das Hutchinson, one of their riders, who is trying to get some cohesion. They've only just crossed the finish line now at that intermediate sprint point. Zoe Backstead is in that group too, so it just shows you,
and it's nearly a minute.
Nearly a minute, that gap, but it just shows you can have the perfect execution. You can have a brilliant day one day and how it changes 24 hours later.
Exactly, and I noticed that even though we've now seen two of her teammates come through the line, none of them are actually with her, so she's isolated at the moment. She's got two teammates kind of trying to get back to her now, but she's really relying on the fact that maybe this group do decide to work, and I'm not sure that's going to happen because you've got two EF Oatley riders in this group. They're not going to have any will to help her, to help close that gap, because of course they've got Kristen Faulkner up ahead in that lead group, and she might end up with a leader's jersey at the end of the day. So I think Kim LaCourte is in a tough position right now.
Well, a huge shame for the Mauritian champion. A crash early on in the stage. She managed to get back up and get back into the peloton, but with all of the splits and the injections of pace, just coming across the line there in the pink jersey, Nina Burton, she's done a tremendous job for Kristen Faulkner throughout the whole day today. She's worked so hard on the front, but now it's Megan Jastrab who's on the front in the indigo jersey of Picnic Postonel with the orange cross, orange lines. Josie Nelson is there.
I wonder if Pfeiffer Georgie has given them a lot of information about the key points of this circuit and how to kind of execute a race win on Saltburn Bank, because obviously Pfeiffer Georgie's won there 2 years in a row now.
Well, take a look at this. Charlotte Cole is there, and arguably she's one of the fastest riders in this group. Picnic Postonel right now have 5 riders who are basically doing through and off a team time trial, if you like.
And Lorena Wiebes isn't there, so you know, great rivals Charlotte Kool and Lorena Wiebes. We often talk about them if they're in the same race and it's likely to be a sprint. We talk about which one of them might take the win, and Lorena Wiebes isn't here. She got caught up in that crash, and it looks as though they're going all in for Charlotte Kool.
This is the first chasing group, including the blue jersey who's just on the left-hand side, Anuska Costa. Several riders. A couple of riders from EF Education Oatley. Is this the group of Lorena Wiebes potentially? Certainly the group of the green jersey of Kim LaCourte.
I haven't spotted the European
champion, have we?
I think Anuska Costa, she won't be too worried right now, because her main rival for that Queen of the Mountains jersey at the moment was Kim LaCourte. She's obviously in the same group now. Anuska Costa has a slight points advantage, having taken 9 points at the Category 1 climb on that previous lap, and so it looks as though she'll be wearing that jersey tomorrow in her own right, as opposed to just borrowing it.
A little pause on the 11th for the golfers to take a little look at the race as they come by, because this is full flight, 15.2 kilometers to go. We're going to get to the base of that Queen of the Mountain very shortly. They'll get to the base of the climb with 14.9 kilometres remaining. They'll get to the top with 13.2 kilometres to go, and they'll know it well on Marske Lane. Margot Vigie, the rider numbered 73 in the yellow jersey. She's also got Amber Pate with her in this group, as well as one of the riders from Lidl Trek, that's Loretta Hansen.
Picnic Post and our riders are just making sure that they keep taking on the nutrition. Even though they're 15 kilometres from the end of the stage, it's going to be a really hard 15 kilometres, and if they want to get Charlotte Kool to the finish in the best position to potentially take that stage win, they need to be looking after themselves as well as her. And as we mentioned earlier, they're also making sure they're fueling for the next few days, because tomorrow is the longest stage of the race.
Certainly is. Calso to Calso, over 140 kilometres of racing tomorrow. They know they've got a few difficult obstacles before they get to the finish of today's stage. Likewise, also in this group is Eleonora Gasparini, Ordbianik number 91 of Movistar. They're driving hard into the base of this Queen of the Mountain. They go through the bottom of it, and it's really the final 500 metres of this Queen of the Mountain that is where it's at its most difficult here, Hayley.
Yeah, this course is so interesting, because a lot of the climbs come straight off the back of quite a fast descent, and it gives teams, especially if you've got 5 riders all from the same team working cohesively, it gives them the opportunity to really string out this group, which is what we're seeing now, on these fast descent sections, and then another rider can almost launch an attack as soon as they get to the increased gradients.
Megan Jastrab is the rider who's on the front doing all of the work right now for Picnic Postenel. She just hands over to Charlotte Kool. Megan Jastrab is the highest placed rider of their team, 8th overall at 18 seconds. Surely this tells me they're only going for the stage victory here.
Yeah, because
is there an opportunity to still go for the general classification or not?
I mean, there is, but I suppose it depends. As a team, they will have looked at the race as an overall. They will have looked at all of the stages together, and they'll think, okay, well, do we realistically think that at the end of the 4 stages, Megan Jastrab, for example, could take the general classification? Or if we don't think that she's going to be on the overall podium, is our best option in terms of getting a result in this race to go for a stage victory? So it is sometimes a balance of ambitions, and they will have gone into the race with one thing in mind, and that can obviously change depending on what happens on each stage. But they'll be looking to see what's our best opportunity to get a podium result out of this race, and potentially they've decided that that's a stage victory.
Josie Nelson takes over at the front, the British rider for Picnic Postenel. Rihanna Marcus a little further back for Lidl Trek. They want to try and capitalise on this race situation, this racing scenario. And 5 riders: Megan Jastrab, Charlotte Kool, Josie Nelson, Esme Papakamp and Mara Roldan. Kaylee Barbieri had done so much work earlier on.
Kristen Faulkner was keeping herself in a really, really nice position there, just not right at the front, but making sure that she's near enough to the front that she can respond if anything happens, and she looks comfortable.
Even on these gradients here, Hayley, we're starting to see riders who are being ejected out of the back. Tizia Paternoster, by the looks of things, from Liverlula Jaco. So Charlotte Kool, Lizzie Deignan, and one other rider is chasing, but it looks as though it could be over for these 5 riders who have been chasing tirelessly, including Amber Pate, Margot Vigie, Ordbianik, Eleonora Gasparini and Loretta Hansen, because the cars are through the gap. And here we go. Onto the final 500 metres of this Queen of the Mountain. Picnic Postenel, they launch their rider. This is what they've been trying to set up, trying to go for the stage victory here, but it's a question of who can respond, because there's been several teams and several riders who've been so attentive, so alert, and Picnic Postenel have been biding their time and launched a rider up the road.
This is a great move, and you know, maybe they realised from the last lap just what a difference this particular climb can make and where the right point to attack was. But you know, they've got numbers in that group as well, so the onus is now on the other riders to chase, and then if they manage to bring her back, another one of their riders could attack.
21-year-old Canadian rider Mara Roldan launches herself up the road. It's not just the Queen of the Mountain points that she's looking for, but Pinkley Postinella looking for a stage victory into Saltburn by the Sea. Top job from Charlotte Cole. She fully committed herself in what was a team time trial-esque performance. More riders starting to be distanced on these steep gradients towards the top here, and Hayley, after such a difficult, demanding day, and when you get to these steep gradients of 10, 11, 12%, the legs just explode.
It's the accumulation of the fatigue on this course, and that's something that Kristen Faulkner spoke about yesterday, and something that really suits her, and we can see that from how comfortable she looks. But I just want to say, what an incredible ride from Lauren Dixon. I can still see her at the front of this race, and last year she was a non-finisher in the national championships on this course.
Over the top of that Queen of the Mountain, it's Mara Roldan who takes the 10 points at that categorised 1. Lauren Dixon taking second and picking up those 9 points. What a fantastic ride from the rider from Hansling Alba. Kristen Faulkner picking up the 8 points. And we've got a very select group that's coming into our finish here in Saltburn by the Sea. But for Lauren Dixon, and you're just mentioning, she had a brilliant performance over the last few weeks, and she's the only rider there for her team. She's having to handle this all by herself. But as you say, a year ago, her results were very different. But let's not forget, she's new to the sport. She's only in her second full season as a rider.
Absolutely, but you know, her first kind of UCI result from last year was a non-finish, being a non-finisher in the national championships, which, you know, it wasn't an exact replica of this course, but a lot of it was the same. And then less than a year later, she's at the front of this race with the best riders in the world, an Olympic champion, national champions, and she's holding her own. And regardless of what happens today, whether she manages to stay in this group, whether she finds herself fatiguing and falling backwards, she should really enjoy and try and soak in as much of this as she can, because this is a real standout performance from her.
Yeah, she should relish this moment, this opportunity, and the big strides that she's made in such a short space of time, the performances that she's had. And when you take a look by the rider from Scotland, it's been pretty exceptional, even over the last couple of weeks. A win at the Rafa Lincoln Grand Prix. She had a 9th place in the general classification of the Tour de Féminine, a 2nd place in the Tour of Norway. If you take a look back a little further back, even a one-day race in France, 2nd place behind Paola Blasi, Annika Dijkstra taking 3rd on that day, and Celia Géry of FDJ Suez, who was in this race, was 4th. So watch out for Lauren Dixon.
I think other teams should be paying attention to this, and I think we'll see her potentially move up to a big team next year. I think she deserves it after the performances she's had in the last few months, and teams will also be excited by the fact that she's so new to the sport. So she's almost a bit of a blank canvas, and someone that they'll see that they can put their knowledge and expertise into her, give her some opportunities, and she could be a really good investment. You can see the effort just taking its toll. These roads are so hard. They passed the top of that Queen of the Mountains point quite a while ago now, but the road just continues to undulate, and there's really no easing up on this circuit at all.
10.3 kilometres to go. We're into our final, heading for Saltburn by the Sea. If you're just joining us, we had 3 riders who made a breakaway: Tiffany Keep, Lucy Gadd and Maddie Leach. They had a maximum advantage of over 3 minutes. Things all started to change once we got to our finishing loop and we'd gone through our first intermediate sprint in Guisborough. That's when things started to fragment. It was Tiffany Keep who won the first Queen of the Mountain of the day. She also took the maximum points and bonus seconds in Guisborough at that intermediate intermediate sprint too. Things started to change once we got to Saltburn Bank. It was Lizzie Deignan, the former world champion and two-time winner of this race, who kicked things off, and through that intermediate sprint, things started to change. We had a crash earlier on of our leader in the general classification, Kim LaCourt, very early on in the race. She's no longer in this front group. She's no longer in chase 1, she's in chase 2. We've also seen a crash from the European champion Lorena Wiebes. She's no longer in chase group 1 either. So the situation is, it's been a very hard, demanding, attritional race. We've got a very select group of riders, and this rider, Mara Roldan of Picnic Postanel, made an attack on that second Queen of the Mountain up Marske Lane. She took the maximum points, and she's now got a great advantage going into our final, which is going to finish over the top of Saltburn Bank and finish in Saltburn by the sea. My name's Hannah Walker. Alongside me is Hayley Simmons. This final 10 kilometres is no easy feat, because we've got the country lanes, we've got some undulation, we've got the false flats, and then of course you've got to tackle Saltburn Bank once again.
Exactly, you know, the riders now know what's facing them because they've already done this circuit once. The unclassified climbs are almost more difficult than Saltburn, because you know, with Saltburn it's hard for sure, but it's 300 meters, whereas actually some of the undulations that they've got to tackle before then they're longer, they're more wearing, and at this point in the race, after 2 3/4 hours of racing, they're going to have a lot of fatigue in the legs.
Through 10 kilometres, 20 seconds is the advantage for Mara Roldan, the Canadian who's had one professional victory in the past. She's only 21 years of age. New rider within this squad, previously racing for Siniska Racing Team. Now got a multi-year contract with Picnic Postanel in a World Tour team.
This is where she's just got to be just a little bit careful, because this is the section where we saw that there's still some patches of wet road here, and this is where we saw the crash on the previous lap. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, whether Lorena Wiebes herself crashed or whether a couple of riders crashed ahead of her and she ended up being tangled up in it. But you know, the riders have had the opportunity to see this once now, so they do know what the roads are like, and hopefully it will be a kind of smoother kind of lap through here this time.
She throws the bike into the right-hand corner. Now into those crunchy lanes. This is where the descent really starts before you head into those trees and you head into the dappled light, some wet patches here and there. Several riders in this group, including Caroline Swinkles, Amber Crack, Rihanna Marcus, Anna Henderson, Kristen Faulkner. We've also got Chiara Consoni, Cecilia Uttrup-Ludwig. As right now, Mara Roldan, 40 miles per hour as she travels down this fast section of road. Also in that chasing group is Quincy Ton, Kat Ferguson, Sarah Van Dam, Megan Jastrap and Lauren Dixon. And it's Rihanna Marcus, the top time trialist from the Netherlands, Super Domestique, who sensed the danger of Mara Roldan. She's rolled off the front. She's got an advantage, and she's coming in pursuit of the Canadian. 21 seconds is the advantage for Roldan, but look how smooth Marcus looks.
You can see that she's settled into that nice, almost kind of time trial style on the road bike, and she has sensed that danger, and maybe she's a little bit fresher than our leader here, because she's, you know, Rihanna Marcus has been able to just sit in the group that bit longer, so she might have a bit of an advantage here.
Into the trees. This is where we had that crash earlier on of Lorena Wiebes and a couple of other riders. They know this road well. Other riders who were in that group, 2 riders from the Great Britain national team, Flora Perkins and Millie Cousins, both riders looking for their first professional victory. The 21-year-olds have had a great performance so far. Don't forget, Millie Cousins, the highest placed of the 2 riders, 7th overall in 18 seconds. Mara Roldan, she attacks each and every rise.
Yeah, absolutely, and you really have to on this course, but which is easier said than done because there are so many of them, but there are so many bits of road that just get very steep very quickly, and if you don't attack them before the steeper gradients kick in, then you'll lose all your momentum. So it really is crucial just to keep the pressure on the pedals. But as I said, it happens so often on this course that that it's sapping. It's just so wearing.
And you can see the road stretching ahead of the riders now, and it just keeps going up and up and up until they get to that roundabout at the top where they'll turn right. They've got a very smooth road, fast descent down to another roundabout, which is a very quick left, and then immediately they're again onto some steep gradients.
The attritional roads, they never relent here. Right now, it's favouring Mara Roldan, the 21-year-old. 17 seconds to our first chaser, and that's Rhiannon Marcus.
It did look as though there was starting to be some response from some of the FGJ Suez riders as well, that were kind of aware that letting Rhiannon Marcus get a gap was maybe not the best idea. So it'll be interested to see whether that gap still exists or whether Marcus has been reeled back in. Oh no, she does still have a gap there. She looks like she's making some headway, actually.
Yeah, she's certainly making the inroads, isn't she, Rhiannon Marcus? She's an excellent time trialist, but she makes it look effortless. She makes it look like she's just floating up these climbs. Given her experience, the way that she looks on a bike, her pedaling style,
she looks a lot smoother and more under control. You can see the difference in body language between these two riders. You know, Rhiannon Marcus is rock solid on the bike, whereas yeah, it's a much more kind of laboured effort at the front here, a lot more kind of rocking of the body, and some of that's just going to be the fatigue from the amount of time that she's been out the front, and the effort that she put in on the classified climb in order to get that gap. But at the moment, Rhiannon Marcus looks much calmer and as though she has more energy remaining.
Mara Roldan, the under-23 Canadian time trial and road race champion, is being chased down by a former Dutch time trial champion. Movistar are at the front of this chasing group here because they know that you need to try and bring things back for Kat Ferguson. She's sitting towards the back of the group. Don't forget, Kat Ferguson is aiming to try and go for the general classification. Right now, she's occupying the best young rider classification, but she wants the green jersey, or at least to finish as high up as possible come the end of this Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Mara Roldan makes the right-hand turn. She's going to have this fast-flowing descent before a very sharp left-hand turn at the bottom of the roundabout before it starts to kick up once again. You've got the false flat, then you've got those hard gradients before you crest over the top, and you'll have the next part of the descent and into Saltburn by the sea.
Yeah, Mara Roldan's just trying to take a little bit of recovery while the speed is high here, but she knows that she's not going to have that chance for very long because she'll soon be at the roundabout, and then it's going to be another really, really hard effort if she wants to stay ahead of Rhiannon Marcus.
Both riders just taking the opportunity to get some respite, take a breather, just have that reset. Laser focus, Rhiannon Marcus, and behind Anna Henderson, she doesn't have to contribute to the chase. She's the rider in the red, yellow and blue jersey for Lidl Trek. Meanwhile, it's Floortje Mackay who's having to pull things back for Kat Ferguson. They've used up Ordbieni. They've used up their two young Spanish riders, Laura and Lucia Ruiz Perez, the two twins. Right now, Kat Ferguson only has Floortje Mackay to try and help and assist and to try and bring back this dangerous duo.
Movistar have done a really good job actually these last 2 days. They were one of the teams that were really contributing yesterday to the chase to try and bring back Kim LaCourte and Kristen Faulkner. Obviously, they didn't quite manage it, but they did manage the time gap. So it was only a handful of seconds between the race leader and Kat Ferguson. And again, we've just seen them really use their domestiques very, very well throughout this stage. And now Floortje Mackay, doing this final bit of work for Kat Ferguson to put her in the best position possible. And we've mentioned Kat Ferguson knows this finish really well because she's raced it several times before. So I think Movistar as a team are executing a plan really well and doing a very good job. Oh, that's laboured.
Such a laboured
She's giving
effort,
absolutely everything to desperately try and stay ahead of Rhiannon Marcus and the chasing group. This is a really, really impressive ride from the young rider.
And brave ride from Mara Roldan. She's giving it absolutely everything to try and go for her first ever World Tour victory. And can it come today on stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women? Picnic Postinel, they had a plan. They executed it very, very well on Marske on that Queen of the Mountain. They launched Mara Roldan over the climb. She got that advantage. And, well, nobody could react to the explosive move of the Canadian. Behind, this is the third group, the larger of the chasing group. Still in the group is Imogen Wolf in the yellow jersey for Visma Lease Bike. Watch out for Kat Ferguson in the white jersey. Make sure you keep an eye on Flora Perkins and Millie Cousins, the 2 riders for the Great Britain national team. Both riders will know this climb very well.
And Lauren Dixon's still there as well.
Yeah, terrific from Lauren Dixon.
I think this almost just goes to show just how much of an advantage it is to know this circuit, because there are a lot of British riders still in here, you know.
And if you're wondering where Lauren Dixon is, she's the rider sitting third wheel in that chasing group. She's got the blue jersey on, the blue shorts, the blue overshoes with the pink shoulders and that mint green helmet. So watch out for Lauren Dixon.
She's just sat on Anna Henderson's wheel, and that is a really good wheel to follow as well. So she is having a really standout performance on the back of actually some incredible months of racing.
The progress that she's made has been incredible, particularly in the last year. 8 seconds between Mara Roldan and Rihanna Marcus, 35 seconds to the group behind. This is touch and go.
It is, which we said yesterday as well. The difficulty here is that we're finishing up Saltburn, and even though it's short, with the gradients that we see on Saltburn Bank and the fact that these riders already have so much fatigue in the legs, you can gain or lose a lot of time very quickly, even on a 300-meter climb. So I do think it's going to come down to Saltburn.
Who's the onus on here to do the chasing? Because Anna Henderson, she's sitting second wheel. Of course, she's got Rihanna Marcus, a teammate who is in the chase to Mara Roldan. She's not going to contribute. You've got 2 riders from Visma Lease Bike. You've got 2 riders from Canyon SRAM Zonda Crypto. And right now, it's only Floortje Mackay of Movistar who's doing the work for Kat Ferguson.
Yeah, so Floortje Mackay clearly is completely invested in the plan of Kat Ferguson being a contender for the stage win. It really... You know what, I'm not even sure that there's onus on any particular team. I think the only people that you can say don't have any responsibility to chase are the riders from Picnic Post NL and the riders from Little Trek, because they're the teams that have a rider out of the front. I think for everyone else, it's really, is there more than one rider in the group? And if so, which one of the 2 or multiple are the domestiques and which one's the team leader? And with Saltburn, it's almost every woman for herself, to be honest. Like, if you have a team helper to put you in the right position at the bottom, great. But otherwise, it's just a full gas 45-second effort to the finish line.
The leaders have gone through 2 kilometers to go. The chasing group behind, which is being led now by FDJ Suez, go through 2 kilometers to go until they get to that finish. They're going to have that fast running down to the sea, down to Saltburn Bank, and then up to Saltburn by the sea and into our finish. It's such a hard, difficult final. And Mara Roldan, she's still not been caught yet. This has been a tremendous performance from the Canadian, and still Rihanna Marcus has to make the junction to the Canadian.
I'm super impressed, actually. The difference in the pedaling styles really suggested to me as though Rihanna Marcus looked a lot more comfortable and that she would actually close that gap more quickly than, well, in fact, she hasn't really closed it at all.
Through the Flamme Rouge, 1,000 meters to go. Mara Roldan is the sole leader here on stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. She's being chased down frantically by Rihanna Marcus, but for Mara Roldan, the Canadian, don't look back, eyes ahead, keep your eyes on Saltburn Bank. 300 meters of pain awaits of this demanding climb, average gradients of 14.7%, and Mara Roldan is going to attack this final climb. She wants her first professional World Tour victory. She's won 1 race in the past, but could today be the first World Tour victory of the 21-year-old Canadian's career? Rihanna Marcus hasn't given up yet.
don't look over your shoulder, just absolutely go. Everything she's got, and you know, her teammate is Pfeiffer Georgie. Pfeiffer has won the national stripes on this climb 2 years running, so hopefully she's just given Mara Alden all of the tips that she needs. And at the moment, she's, I think she could make it.
She's got a handful of seconds over Rihanna Marcus. Now we start to see several riders from the chasing group behind who are trying to make some inroads. But Mara Alden is hauling her way up Saltburn Bank. She can see the barriers. She can see 300 meters to go. And Rihanna Marcus, I think it's going to be a little bit too little, too late to get to Mara Alden.
This is incredible. This is what a performance.
What a performance indeed. Mara Alden, take a bow. Chapeau, that has been an incredible performance. Picnic Postinel came into the final part of this stage. They had a plan. They executed it absolutely to perfection. A big move over the second Queen of the Mountain on Marske Lane, which launched Mara Alden, the 21-year-old Canadian, into that Queen of the Mountain. Nobody could follow. Such was the poise, the power, the speed. Fortune favors the brave, and today it favors Mara Alden. A first World Tour victory for the 21-year-old Canadian, and Picnic Postinel deliver. Behind, it's going to be Rihanna Marcus who takes second on the stage. Meanwhile, the sprint for third, it looks like it's going to go to Ali Wollaston. Fourth place for Megan Jastrab. Chapeau, take a bow. A plan well executed, and they've delivered it. Signed, sealed, delivered.
You could see the emotion on her face, and honestly, well, I'll eat my words or my thoughts or whatever they were, but I think that just came down to grit and determination, because for over 10 kilometers she looked as though she was suffering, but she just kept suffering, and to make it to the top of Saltburn Bank by herself in that company was incredible. And what a team performance. What a well-executed team plan. And there was full commitment from all of their riders. You could see when their riders peeled off, when Charlotte Cool came off on that first cat climb, everyone just bought into the plan completely, and it's delivered them a team win.
14.5 kilometers solo. And despite having the strength and the engines behind, and someone of the caliber of Rihanna Marcus in the chase.
Absolutely, but you know, this is what we spoke about before she attacked. We were talking about, you know, Megan Jastrab's their highest placed rider on GC, but what they must have done as a team, along with the directors, they sat down, they looked at the race, and they thought, what's our best opportunity as a team to get something out of this race? And they obviously identified this stage as the opportunity to take a stage win. But to sit down and plan it on paper and to execute it is two completely different things. And just look at the emotions. Look at how much it means to these riders. They gave everything in service of a teammate to try and get that stage win, and it's paid off. And there's nothing better than that.
Absolutely, that was terrific. Top team performance from Picnic Postinel. They still have Megan Jastrab, and she just came up short of taking some bonus seconds, but fourth place on the stage. She's still there in the hunt and the fight for the general classification, but they've also managed to come away with a stage victory to add to that.
Exactly, so they've protected their general classification chances and taken a stage win, so that's a great day for them as a team.
More and more riders. It was so fragmented, wasn't it, over...
The damage that this circuit does is incredible.
It's always the same. And I have to say, what a terrific course that they put together. Having that final 35-kilometer loop, that circuit. Getting an opportunity to see Saltburn Bank, see Letizia Paternoster and Amber Pate come through. So, Jade Veal of FDJ Suez. But it's a brilliant racing circuit.
It is. I think I enjoy it a bit more from this side a bit more from this side of the screen. Actually, it is a fantastic circuit to race, and actually, even though potentially such a short, steep climb isn't my favourite thing, the fact that the accumulated fatigue over the circuit, I actually love it as a course to race. It provides some spectacular scenery, spectacular views, and it always provides incredible racing. Absolutely incredible racing. I think every time I've been part of or watched a race on this course, it's been so interesting, so exciting.
There you can see from the helicopter shot the team cars, other riders still coming in. Take us through this final part of the race, Hayley, because it was FDJ Suez who was chasing on the front at this point, and through 1 kilometre to go, Mara Roldan still had a substantial advantage.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, she needed every second that she could get, but actually in the end she didn't. I think there was so much fatigue just in the legs of all of the riders that they were almost all on a level footing. Normally you would say that with such a short, steep climb at the end, you would have expected her to be suffering a bit more than maybe some of the riders behind. She's fighting the bike, she's out of the saddle on those steep gradients, just really wrestling with the bike. I mean, it's a really different style to what we can see from Rhiannon Marcus, but you know, I don't know whether it was just pure grit and determination at this point, but clearly she wanted it, and sometimes wanting it more than everyone else just gives you that edge, and I'm almost speechless at her performance today.
That has been a standout performance for a 21-year-old, and sometimes we get used to these young riders winning big races, winning at the highest level of the sport. This is the highest level, a World Tour race. But for a 21-year-old to win a World Tour race, and in the way that she has just delivered that victory,
It was so gutsy.
has been impressive. It's been gutsy, it was brave, and it fortuned the brave.
Yeah, it did. And you know what I also loved is I loved seeing her teammates come over the line, you know, a minute later, a couple of minutes later, and the emotion on their face. It's great to see when obviously the information has been relayed by the DS in the team car to the teammates. The riders coming over the line already know that all of that effort they put in to try and deliver her to the victory paid off. And the fact that they're already celebrating as they come over the finish line just shows what a team sport cycling is.
Mara Roldan came into the day 23rd overall at 1 minute and 40, and you can see she's not sitting up to enjoy the celebrations until she crosses the line. She's getting every single second, including the 10 bonus seconds,
Yeah.
I'll remind you.
Yeah. She will have catapulted herself up quite a few places today, because there are some big gaps opening up. We knew that was going to happen on this circuit, but it'll be interesting to see the overall general classification standings at the end of today. And that's Lauren Dickinson again. I mean, we talked Lauren Dixon again. Like we spoke about some standout performances, and I think today is a real standout performance for her.
Well, there we have our top 10. Mara Roldan wins stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women ahead of Rhiannon Marcus. 12 seconds in the end. 18 seconds to Ali Wollaston. Megan Jastrab in 4th. Kat Ferguson, another 5th place for the British rider, the first British rider on today's stage. Caroline Swinkles in 6th. Cecilia Uttrup-Ludwig in 7th. Sarah Van Dam taking 8th. Kristen Faulkner in 9th. And Quinty Ton in 10th at 22 seconds. This is how our general classification looks like. Kristen Faulkner is the new leader in the general classification. She leads 4 seconds ahead of Rhiannon Marcus. Ali Wollaston is in 3rd at 12 seconds. Kat Ferguson and Caroline Swinkles both at 14 seconds, with Megan Jastrab, Sarah Van Dam, Cecilia Uttrup-Ludwig all 3 at 16 seconds. Quinty Ton and Anna Henderson at 20 seconds, running out the top 10 there. 2 riders in the top 10 from Great Britain. Still with 2 stages to come, and a very demanding stage tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's obviously the longest stage of the race, and you know, there are still tight time gaps at the top, so I think it's going to be all to play for.
There certainly is. Let's take a little look back on how today stage 2 unfolded from Hartlepool, a 114.3 kilometre stage, 1,392 metres of elevation. They started under Pretty grey skies. The rain was falling. Rod Ellingworth, the race director, as they went through kilometre 0, waved the flag. At first, it was pretty calm and placid, quite tranquil. That was until the British Continental teams started to make their move. First with Lucy Harris. She's the rider in the red jersey, followed closely by a number of other riders from the British Continental teams, including Hansling Alba. But a big crash changed a lot in the race early on. A big crash and a hard, heavy crash from the race leader in the green jersey, Kim LaCourte. Fortunately, the Mauritian champion was able to get back on her bike and get underway. Tiffany Keep and Joe Tinley tried to force a breakaway. Tinley was eventually reeled in by the peloton, and then Keep was joined by two more riders who came in pursuit. Maddie Leach in the blue and pink jersey, and the rider in the black jersey on the red bike, that's Lucy Gadd. Hayley, this was a strong trio.
Yeah, unfortunately there were some disruptions. So we see this bike change here for Maddie Leach. That meant that she had to work quite hard to get back in touch, which she did eventually do. But it was always going to be a hard day out for that trio, especially with the big teams behind really controlling the situation and making sure that the gap didn't go over that 3-minute mark.
Into the market town. It was brilliant to see throughout the whole stage. The crowds were aplenty. School children, all they could get out of a class or two to come and cheer on the riders. The gap over 3 minutes at one point, and it was looking a little bit dangerous given the fact that all three riders were working well together. They had great cohesion. Tiffany Keep, she was incredibly strong in this breakaway.
Yeah, she was. She was the one that initiated it, and she worked really well with the other two riders throughout the day to just to give them the best opportunity possible. But I think it was always looking likely as we approached the kind of closing 40 kilometres of the stage, which is where we got the intermediate sprints and then the climbs. It was always looking likely that those obstacles would maybe just prove a bit too much. And it was this sprint actually that really kind of was the beginning of the end for these breakaway riders.
The intermediate sprint coming with 40.5 kilometres to go into Guisborough. Bonus seconds on offer, points to the red points classification. It was Tiffany Keep who wanted to try and take the first place. She managed to do so with some daylight. Lucy Gadd taking second, with Maddie Leach taking third. But this was where we started to see some cracks and we started to see the breakaways begin to fragment. And meanwhile behind, Picnic Postonel with Raquel Barbieri were doing a terrific job at increasing the pace at the head of the peloton. Several other teams were contributing likewise, including UAE Team ADQ, and into the first Queen of the Mountain of the day. This was on to Marske Lane, a categorised one climb, 1.9 kilometres long in total. Tiffany Keep still had some advantage, but it was starting to fall, and it fell pretty rapidly under the pace and the speed that they were going up the climb. Tiffany Keep took the maximum points. She took the 10 points in that classification. Lucy Gadd was hanging on for a second place, but at the very last moment, Anuska Costa in the blue jersey, she came through and took those 9 points. But that was a big change in the whole race. Tiffany Keep was reeled back in. Amber Pate launched herself up the road. And this is where we started to see the race dynamic change.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, it just didn't let up after that Category 1 climb. And what that meant was these constant flurry of attacks meant that nobody could get back in touch. And then, of course, the difficulties with the road leading to some crashes, that just further fractured the race. And we were just left with smaller groups that just basically couldn't rejoin.
Dominika Wladysek, the Polish champion, was caught up. Lorena Wiebes, the European champion, was caught up. We had two distinct chasing groups. Into the first descent of Saltburn Bank as we headed towards the sea, it was Lizzie Deignan of Lidl Trek in the blue, yellow and red jersey who started to really inject some pace. That was just before Anna Henderson went for this intermediate sprint. She knows this final well. She wanted to take some points. She wanted to take some bonus seconds. Kristen Faulkner likewise coming through to take some bonus seconds. Kat Ferguson, it was close on the line, wasn't it? But the Olympic road race champion taking those bonus seconds. And then we had this part in the race where it was almost like a team time trial. Picnic Postonel through the final Queen of the Mountain of the day. They had a plan and they started to execute it.
Absolutely. They had 5 riders, they all came to the front, they obviously each knew what their job was and they executed it perfectly, and then this attack was launched on this Category 1 climb, and it was just, it was a perfectly executed plan.
It was an explosion over the climb, wasn't it, from Mara Roldan? She went over the top of this Queen of the Mountain, the categorised 1 Queen of the Mountain, with daylight, pretty substantial daylight. She took the 10 points in that classification, and nobody really reacted immediately. I mean, to be quite honest, when you take a look at the way that she attacked, there's no surprise, really. I think it wasn't a case of didn't want to, but couldn't react to the 21-year-old Canadian. Rihanna Marcus of Lidl Track, she went in pursuit and she went in the chase, and it was a handful of seconds. Mara Roldan, she threw everything into this.
And Mara Roldan, she looked as though she was suffering from the moment she crossed the line of the categorised climb all the way to the finish, but she just kept suffering, and whether she just had in mind the work that had been done by her teammates and that's what helped her power through, I don't know, but this was an incredible performance, and to hang on for the victory with Rihanna Marcus and the group chasing behind was such a performance.
A career first World Tour victory for the 21-year-old Mara Roldan, the Canadian from Picnic Postonel. Not just an individual victory, but that was a real team performance, a team victory today. Saltburn by the sea, delivering on all aspects. I have to say, both stages that we've seen so far of this Lloyds Tour of Britain Women have just been fantastic. It's lent to exciting racing. The courses that the race organisation, the route director and the race director that they've designed have been top-notch.
I completely agree. I was about to say the same thing. I think the way that the routes have been designed, you know, yesterday's stage was a bit shorter, but the climbs that they'd put into that stage really defined the way that the stage unfolded. Again today with this circuit, particularly this final kind of 30 to 40 kilometre circuit, finishing with the climb up Saltburn, they've really designed routes that are leading to unpredictable and exciting racing, because I don't think anyone would have predicted what happened today. I don't think you would have picked out today's winner. And I think we're going to see exactly the same over the next 2 days. Tomorrow's a longer stage, but it's got a lot of classified climbs in it. It gives a lot of opportunity for attacks. And then that Glasgow circuit, what a finale that's going to be. I think we've got another 2 days of incredible racing ahead of us. But, you know, hats off to Mara Roldan today.
I think that's the beauty of racing, isn't it? And particularly bike racing, that it can be very unpredictable. And when you're willing to take that risk and a team comes in with a brilliant plan and they execute it to perfection, because you never know what might have happened. Maybe there would have been a reaction from other teams, but simply, I think nobody could follow Roldan.
And the race was so fragmented that, yeah, okay, a couple of teams did have multiple riders in that group, though the only team with real numbers was Picnic Postonel, and obviously they used that to their advantage. But the closing parts of this stage, there wasn't necessarily that much of an advantage of having a big team there, because you can't really draft up that climb, so it's just whatever you have left.
Certainly is whatever you've got left. But Mara Roldan, she had plenty to give, particularly on Saltburn Bank. Should we have a little look at what we've got coming up on stage 3, because it's the longest of the 4 stages, starting in Kelso, finishing in Kelso. Let's have a little look as to what the riders will be taking on tomorrow.
The Scottish Borders stage marks the first time in Women's Tour history that the race has visited Scotland. Starting and finishing in Kelso, it's also the longest and hardest stage of this year's race, at 143.8 kilometres long, with over 1,800 metres of ascending. Climbs at Scottsview, Dingleton and Dunyan Hill will test out the peloton before they return to Kelso for the intermediate sprint. The riders then do a short loop, passing through Melrose and repeating 2 of the categorised climbs before racing to the stage finish on Kelso's cobbled Market Square.
Well, how'd you fancy that, Hayley? When you take a look at that profile, we can see some changes.
I think after today, I think the riders are going to be looking at that profile and thinking, "Oh, not again! It's going to be more of the same." But you know what? It makes for super exciting racing for us because I think again there's opportunity. There's opportunity for individual riders and for teams to make a plan and do something that we wouldn't necessarily expect, and it's good. It's going to make it great viewing.
When you take a look at the general classification now, Kristen Faulkner leading that general classification, 4 seconds ahead of Rhiannon Marcus, 12 ahead of Wollaston. Kat Ferguson at 14, with Swinkles also tied with Ferguson on 14 seconds. It's so close in that general classification, but some teams, they're going to be plotting and planning this evening as to how can they overthrow.
You know what? This is where the bonus seconds are crucial as well. And Kristen Faulkner taking those bonus seconds at the top of Saltburn Bank, you know, that gave her that extra bit of a gap at the GC. And I think some of the GC teams, so Kristen Faulkner's team, EF Education Oatley, they're actually going to be praying, I think, that a breakaway of riders who are, you know, minutes in arrears, they're going to be praying that those riders will get away, be in a breakaway, and potentially sweep up some of the bonus seconds that are on offer on those, you know, earlier climbs on the intermediate sprint. They'll be hoping that that a breakaway stays away until that intermediate sprint, and then they don't have to worry about defending bonus seconds, because ultimately the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women has been won and lost before on bonus seconds. So it's going to make for some aggressive racing tomorrow, I think.
It certainly is. The riders will cross the finish line for the first passage of the course with 53.7 kilometres to go. That's when they'll pass through Kelso, and that's where those intermediate sprint will take place. You'll have the bonus seconds, you'll have the points on offer, 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds, don't forget. But as every stage here in this race, we've got 10, 6 and 4 bonus seconds at the finish line of each stage. And so you're quite right, it very often does come down to those bonus seconds. You think back to 2022 when Elisa Longo-Borghini won ahead of Grace Brown by 1 second. It all came down to that finishing position and in that final positioning with the bonus seconds in the top 3.
Yeah, exactly. So it's advantageous for Kristen Faulkner and for EF Education Oatley if they allow a breakaway to go up the road. But of course, they've got to keep tabs on who's in that breakaway, where each of the riders are on the general classification, whether any of them are a risk. And maybe actually some of the teams who are close to the top of the general classification, maybe they're going to be almost trying to sneak some of their riders up the road as well. But and of course, I think tomorrow we're also going to see a hotly contested battle in the Queen of the Mountains competition, because that competition will be wrapped up tomorrow. We don't have any classified climbs on the Glasgow stage, so all of the remaining points on offer, of which there are quite a few tomorrow, but they all come in tomorrow's stage. We have a lot of classified climbs, and I think each of those are also going to be contested. We've got 5 of them, so there's a lot of points on offer, and that competition can completely change as well.
And that could change the whole race, because teams certainly want to come away with a leader's jersey. They want to try and take a leader's jersey home, and when you've got 5 Queen of the Mountains, 3 of which are categorised 1 climbs, which come with big points, 10 points for the first rider to cross the top of that climb, and then you've got 2 third categorised climbs. You've got Scots View, and then you've also got Scots View on 2 occasions, but you've got Dingleton, a categorised 1 climb, you've got Dunyan Hill, a categorised 1 climb, and of course Dingleton a little bit later into the stage.
Maybe we'll see Anushka Costa actually trying to get into that breakaway tomorrow to try and sweep up some of the points. We've seen her do it before, so actually maybe that's why she sat up a little bit today, dropped off that lead group, because she knew that maybe she was in a good place already in that competition, and she could save a little bit of energy for tomorrow.
Well, our stage winner her first World Tour victory. Mara Roldan wins into Saltburn by the Sea with an extraordinary performance. Well deserved. Picnic Postonel executed their team strategy, their team plan to absolute perfection.
She almost looks like she can't quite believe it. Take a drink, that is deserved.
A well-deserved chin-chin of Night Timber. She's also presented with the bottle of champagne, the Night Timber. She wants to open it now, or?
Sometimes you're not sure whether they want it for the celebrations or whether they just want you to take it home and enjoy.
You want that for the evening, don't you? Where you can celebrate with your team.
I tell you what, that team deserves a good team celebration together later, because it really was a team effort to deliver her to the win today.
Big celebrations for the 21-year-old Mara Roldan of Picnic Postonel. A well-deserved celebration. I think that kind of victory and the way in which she's won might take a little while to sink in. We love this aggressive kind of racing. Riders who are willing to take the risk.
Exactly. I think you've said it several times, high risk, high reward, and that's what happened today. And riders who are willing to just take a chance and give everything and hope it pays off, that's what leads to really exciting racing.
You've got to have the legs to finish it off, though.
You do. I really wasn't sure that she did. I really wasn't, but, you know, it was gutsy. I think I used that word earlier, but it really was, and I can't think of another way to describe it. And I feel like at that point it was as mental a battle as anything else.
The most combative rider of the day, no doubt about it. Tiffany Keep of Das Hutchinson has a trip to the podium. The South African is awarded the most combative rider. Brilliant performance from the South African. Not just the most combative rider, but she took points in the Queen of the Mountains competition. She's taken the maximum points at that first intermediate sprint in Guisborough. Brilliant for the team to be on the podium.
It's really important for the British teams to kind of be seen in this race, and you know, we could see that from the fact that all the three riders in that breakaway were all from the British UCI Continental teams, and to be rewarded with a trip to the podium is what they ultimately want.
Kristen Faulkner, the new leader in the red points classification. Bob Howden awards her the tremendous artwork, the trophy, won Manila Cycling Club, the local cycling club also in attendance. We've been hosting lots of vibrant activation in the fan zone in Hartlepool earlier on this morning. They've made their way over to Saltburn by the Sea. Some of them have even ridden over Sophie Brooks, the 14-year-old from Hartlepool, Iris McGlynn, the 13-year-old from North Yorkshire, and Annabelle Carter, also 13 from Stockton. They've ridden ahead of the race to get to Saltburn by the Sea.
Blue jersey, we're going to film for a moment just to give her a chance. How are we doing out there, Saltburn by the Sea? You still with me?
Manila Cycling Club and Cleveland Wheelers and Stockton Wheelers, they do a terrific job of the youngsters in this area and to try and guide them and aspire to one day be racing in the Lloyds Tour of Bred Women.
Yeah, they're great clubs. They're really inclusive. They're big clubs as well. They're well established, and they do a great job of kind of encouraging riders of all ages, actually, and you know, not just young riders, but newcomers to the sport who are maybe a bit older, and having that kind of friendly, supportive club and network is invaluable.
It's absolutely buzzing here at the finish, isn't it, in Saltburn by the Sea? Another jersey, another frame of artwork for Kristen Faulkner, because she's now the leader of the Queen of the Mountains competition. It was a calm performance from Faulkner today. was another good team performance from EF Education Oatley.
Yeah, the team kind of looked after the race situation early on. They were always at the front, keeping check on the breakaway. And then, you know, in the closing stages, Kristen Faulkner was there kind of by herself. She didn't have teammates left in that final lap. But by that point, they'd kind of done their job, and Kristen Faulkner's experienced enough to have been able to kind of look after her own interests in that moment and make sure that she was in the right place when she needed to be in order to keep herself in contention.
Remaining in the lead of the best young rider classification is British rider Kat Ferguson of Movistar. Great finish from 19-year-old Kat Ferguson up Saltburn Bank. Another white jersey to add to her collection. She gets the trophy and the artwork.
It was another good team performance by Movistar as well. They used their riders very well, very intelligently. And Florence Mackay did a really good job, again, in the closing stages to make sure that Kat Ferguson was well positioned into that final climb.
Please welcome from Lloyds,
Another attritional day tomorrow. Let's see how, in her general classification quest, how Kat Ferguson gets on. She's certainly showing very good legs. She's got good form. Cleveland Wheelers, I like that they're sharing it amongst the different local clubs here, of presenting the prizes, awarding our leader. And Kristen Faulkner, well, she makes another trip back to the podium. She's the new leader in the green Lloyds Tour of Britain leaders jersey. Really nice moment from the Olympic champion with our aspiring youngsters.
It's so nice to see things like this, and you know, you can't put into words what it means to some of these young riders who are maybe hoping themselves that they'll one day be part of the race, to get the opportunity to stand next to and put their arm around the Olympic champion and you know, the current race leader.
And this is what it's all about. Everybody starts somewhere, Hayley.
Yeah.
Whether you get into the sport later in life, we know some riders come into the sport in maybe their late teens, early 20s, and like Lauren Dixon, for example, only been racing for just over a year, but some, they get into the sport when they're 8, 9, 10 years old, and they aspire to be like riders like Kristen Faulkner, or indeed Mara Roldan. Here's a reminder of our top 10 on stage 2 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain women. From Hartlepool to Saltburn by the Sea, Roldan winning ahead of Marcus, Wollaston, Jastrab, Ferguson, Swinkles, Uttrup Ludwig, Van Dam, Faulkner and Quinty Ton rounding out the top 10. In the general classification, here's a reminder. Kristen Faulkner leads 4 seconds ahead of Rhiannon Marcus. Ali Wollaston at 12 seconds, with Ferguson and Swinkles both on 14 seconds. Jastrab, Van Dam, Uttrup Ludwig all on 16 seconds, with Ton and Henderson rounding out the top 10, both on 20 seconds. But it's still all to play for. It's still all to fight for on tomorrow's stage. We've got such a difficult stage. Well, let's see. Today was another thriller. It was a nail-biter, and Mara Roldan took a career best performance. Her first World Tour victory, a brilliant performance executed well by Picnic Postinel. She takes stage 2 ahead of Rhiannon Marcus. It was a wonderful day. It was an exciting day. More of the same tomorrow from myself, Hannah Walker, and Hayley Simmons. We'll see you for stage 3 tomorrow from Kelso to Kelso.